What if Deku never got one for all and still made it into UA? If Aizawa finds him first, and instead of power training, Deku learns underground hero skills, stealth Parker capture tactics, and rescue strategy. So when the UA entrance exam begins, Deku doesn't win by destroying robots, he wins by outsmarting the entire system. But once real villains show up, USJ, the sports festival, even Stain, Deku's biggest weapon isn't strength, it's the fact that he's the one who keeps everyone alive. This is My Hero Academia if Deku was trained by Eraserhead.
It started like most of Izuku Midoriya's worst days did, with laughter that didn't belong to him. The classroom smelled like cheap deodorant and chalk dust and the faint burn of ambition, everyone's. Except his. The teacher's voice blurred into background noise as the words UA entrance exam hit the room and sparked a chain reaction. Desks shifted. Pens clicked. Kids who had never once opened a textbook suddenly sat up straighter like the future had just walked in. Izuku sat up too. Not because he was confident. Because hope, for him, was a stubborn reflex, like breathing. "All right," the teacher said, clapping his hands. "Enough chatter. You all know the drill. Those aiming for hero courses, submit your forms. We'll send the recommendations." Forms rustled. Names were spoken with casual certainty. Quirks got mentioned like resume bullet points. Explosion. Half cold, half hot. Engine. Hardening. Every word was a door. And Izuku was standing outside in the rain. He kept his face neutral. He had practiced that. Neutral meant safe. Neutral meant the world didn't notice how badly you wanted something. Then the teacher glanced at his paper and laughed, actually laughed. Like it was a joke someone had told. "Midoriya," he said, voice dripping with mild disbelief. "You're applying to UA's hero course too." The room went quiet in that special way a crowd gets quiet when it smells blood. Izuku's throat tightened, but he nodded, carefully. "Yes, sir." A couple of kids snickered. Someone coughed out a laugh. And then, because the universe had a sense of humor and it hated him, Katsuki Bakugo turned around in his seat and smiled. Not a friendly smile. Bakugo's smile was a warning sign on a fence, "Keep out." "You serious?" Bakugo said, loud enough for the whole class. "Deku, you can't even." He flicked his palm. A spark popped from his skin, tiny and casual. Like a magician showing off a coin trick. The class flinched on instinct. Even the teacher didn't tell him to stop. Izuku's fingers curled around his pencil so hard the wood creaked. He didn't yell. He didn't swing. He just did what he always did. He swallowed it. "I'm serious," Izuku said. I'll do my best." That made Bakugo laugh harder. "Your best." Bakugo leaned closer, eyes sharp. "You're quirkless. Your best is being a cautionary tale." Izuku's ears burned, but his eyes stayed on Bakugo's hands. On his stance, on the way his shoulders rolled like he was always ready to explode forward. Izuku couldn't help it. He was still analyzing. Always analyzing. It wasn't a superpower. It wasn't even impressive. It was just the only weapon he'd ever been allowed to hold. Bakugo's laughter faded into the bell. The class spilled into the hallway, and Izuku moved like a shadow among brighter things. Clutching his UA application like it was fragile. Because it was. Outside, the afternoon air was cold and bright. The streets of Musudafu buzzed with life, people with quirks and bags and jobs and problems. Neon hero ads glowed on corner screens. A billboard displayed the smiling face of a top-ranked pro, teeth perfect, costume flawless. Heroes are everywhere, Izuku thought. Except when you needed them. He reached into his backpack and pulled out his worn notebook, the one with pages crammed with handwriting so dense it looked like code. It wasn't just hero facts. It was patterns, weaknesses, move sets, rescue strategies, gear notes, public incident breakdowns. A lot of people collected baseball cards. Izuku collected ways to survive. He stopped under an overpass and watched people cross the street. A woman with a flame quirk lit a cigarette without a lighter. A kid with bouncy rubber arms swung his school bag like a toy. A businessman with stone skin stood at a crosswalk, completely unbothered by the wind. Quirks were normal. Quirklessness was a defect the world preferred not to look at. He looked down at his hands. Plain, small, scarred from childish falls. Then, like it always did, the memory came back. All Might. A huge smile. A voice like sunshine. "You can become a hero." Just thinking about it made his chest ache. Izuku shut the notebook and started walking home. And that's when the trouble found him. It didn't arrive with dramatic music. It didn't give him warning. It didn't care that he was just a kid with a dream and no backup plan. A wet, choking gasp hit the air behind him. Izuku turned and saw a man stumble out of an alley, face contorting in panic. Something dark and viscous poured around his neck and mouth like living sludge. The man clawed at his own throat, eyes bulging, trying to scream. A second later, the alley itself seemed to breathe. The slime surged. It wasn't just covering him. It was wearing him. Izuku froze. His brain screamed, "Villain." His body screamed, "Run." But his eyes started working immediately, snapping details like photos. The sludge moved like fluid under pressure. It had mass. It had intent. It wrapped tightest around the man's face, oxygen denial, control. Hostage. Izuku's legs finally moved, but not forward. Backward. Into the crowd. People noticed. A woman shrieked. Someone knocked over a bicycle. A kid began to cry. "Villain." Someone shouted. "Call a hero." The sludge villain surged out of the alley, dragging the man like a puppet. It scanned the street, hungry and frantic. "I need a new body," it gurgled. Voice like bubbles bursting in mud. "This one's weak, too weak." It spotted Izuku. And Izuku felt the attention like a cold hand grabbing his spine. He couldn't move. Not because he was brave. Because he was terrified. The sludge shot forward. People screamed and scattered. A car honked. The man in the sludge convulsed. Izuku's breath came too fast. Then, something snapped across the air like a whip. A cloth, no, a scarf, wrapped around the sludge villain's torso mid-lunge and yanked so hard it slammed into the pavement. The street cracked. Slime splattered. A shadow landed on a streetlight above them. Black coat. Messy hair. Tired eyes. Aizawa Shota. Eraserhead. Izuku's heart launched into his throat. Aizawa dropped down with the calm of someone stepping off a curb, scarf moving like a living thing. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. Aizawa's eyes glowed red. The sludge villain jerked, its form destabilizing for a fraction, like someone had unplugged an engine. Quirk erased. Aizawa didn't waste the moment. He drove his heel into the villain's core and snapped the scarf tighter, binding it, controlling its shape. The villain shrieked, half fury, half panic. "What? Who?" Aizawa didn't answer. He never did. He just worked. The man trapped inside coughed, gasping as oxygen returned. Aizawa twisted his scarf, creating pressure points, pinning the villain without crushing the hostage. His movements were efficient, brutal in their simplicity. No wasted energy. No grandstanding. Izuku stood there, frozen, watching the fight like it was a lesson he didn't know he'd signed up for. That's what a hero looks like, he thought. Not a smile. Not a slogan. Just a solution. The sludge villain tried to surge outward again, but Aizawa's eyes stayed locked. And every time the slime attempted to use its quirk to expand, it failed, collapsed back into a more vulnerable, constrained state. Aizawa's scarf snapped, and the villain was slammed into a storm drain grate. "Police," Aizawa said finally, voice flat. "Containment foam. Now." 2 officers rushed in, foam canisters already in hand like they'd been waiting for their cue. They sprayed the villain. The sludge hissed and struggled, but the foam hardened, trapping it. The man stumbled free, collapsing to his knees, coughing violently. The crowd erupted into relieved chatter. Izuku couldn't breathe, not because he was scared anymore. Because he was staring at Aizawa like he was staring at gravity. Aizawa's eyes dimmed back to normal. He looked excited, match the adrenaline of the fight. Like this was just one more mess on a long list of messes. He turned, and his gaze landed on Izuku. It wasn't angry. It wasn't kind. It was the look of someone measuring a problem. Izuku instinctively bowed. Thank you for saving." Aizawa cut him off with a slight tilt of his head, eyes narrowing. "You didn't run fast enough," Aizawa said. Izuku blinked. I tried." "You froze," Aizawa said. "That gets you killed. Or worse, it gets someone else killed while you stand there thinking." The words hit like a slap because they were true. Izuku swallowed. "I'm sorry." Aizawa's gaze slid past him, scanning the crowd. The damaged street, the hostage being helped up. Then, almost as an afterthought, he looked back. You were analyzing, Aizawa said. Izuku's mouth opened. Huh, you weren't just staring, Aizawa continued. Your eyes were moving, tracking. You were trying to figure out what it was doing. Izuku's cheeks warmed. I always do that. Aizawa's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, like a door cracked open a millimeter. Name, Aizawa said. Izuku nearly tripped over the answer. Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya. Aizawa's eyes flicked to his shoes, his bag. His stiff posture, the tension in his shoulders like he was bracing for a hit that hadn't come yet. You're a middle schooler, Aizawa said. Yes. You're not in hero training, Aizawa said. No. Aizawa's eyes narrowed again. And you're quirkless. Izuku's stomach dropped. That word always did it. Like the world reminded him, you don't belong. Yes, Izuku admitted quietly. The crow. Noise swallowed the silence for a moment. Sirens wailed in the distance. The streetlights hummed. Aizawa stared at him like he was trying to decide whether to walk away. Then he asked, blunt and sharp. Why are you applying to UA? Izuku flinched. The honest answer rose up before he could stop it. Because I want to save people, he said, voice shaking. Because I want to be a hero. Because All Might told me I could. He didn't say that part. He didn't want this tired, ruthless pro to laugh at it. Aizawa didn't laugh. He sighed. A long, irritated exhale like someone had just handed him paperwork. You want to be a hero, Aizawa repeated. But you're not training. You're not conditioned. You don't have gear. You don't have experience. And you froze in a live incident. Izuku's hands trembled. Aizawa stepped closer. Not threatening, just close enough that Izuku could see the faint lines under his eyes, the dry irritation of someone who didn't sleep enough. If you walk into UA's entrance exam like this, Aizawa said, you'll get hurt. Or you'll get in someone else's way. Or you'll die. Izuku's throat tightened. He forced the words out anyway. Then what am I supposed to do? Aizawa stared at him. And for a second, Izuku thought the answer would be the one he'd heard his whole life. Give up. Instead, Aizawa's voice went even flatter. Stop romanticizing heroism, he said. Start treating it like a job. Izuku blinked. Aizawa continued, like he was reading from an invisible checklist. A job requires skill, conditioning, preparation, tools, risk assessment. If you don't have a quirk, you need everything else to be flawless. Izuku's heart thudded. Aizawa turned away, already moving as the police finished securing the villain. Izuku panicked. This was the part where the moment ends. The pro leaves. The dream stays impossible. He stepped forward without thinking. Wait. Aizawa paused, half looking back. Izuku's hands clenched at his sides. I'll train. I can train. I've been trying, just, not like you. Not, properly. Aizawa's eyes held him. Then, quietly, with the patience of someone who had no patience left, he asked. Do you want to be a hero, or do you want to feel like one? Quote. Izuku's lips parted. The question wasn't poetic. It wasn't inspiring. It was a scalpel. And Izuku understood what it meant. Feeling like a hero was charging in with tears and hope and no plan. Being a hero was doing what worked, even when it wasn't dramatic. Izuku swallowed hard. I want to be one, he said. For real. Aizawa stared another second. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small card, and flicked it toward Izuku. Izuku caught it with clumsy fingers. It wasn't a business card with a fancy logo. It was plain. A name, a time, a location, and one sentence written in sharp, minimal text. 3 months. No excuses. Izuku looked up so fast his neck hurt. Is this? He whispered. Aizawa adjusted his scarf, eyes already drifting back toward the street like he was mentally checking off threats. It's not mentorship, Aizawa said. Don't get sentimental. Izuku's chest tightened anyway. It's preparation, Aizawa continued. If you show up, you train. If you don't, you stop wasting your own time. Izuku's hands shook around the card like it might vanish. Aizawa-sensei. Aizawa flinched at the title, like it annoyed him on principle. Don't call me that, he said. Then he added, almost grudgingly. And don't tell anyone. Izuku nodded so hard it was ridiculous. Yes, sir. Aizawa looked at him again, eyes tired but sharp. One more thing, he said. Izuku froze. Bracing. Aizawa's voice lowered slightly. If you're doing this because some hero told you a comforting lie, you'll quit the first time it hurts. Izuku's throat tightened around a name he didn't say. Aizawa continued, relentless. I'm not here to inspire you. I'm here to make sure you don't die. Understood. Izuku's eyes stung, but he didn't blink. Understood, he whispered. Aizawa turned and walked away, melting into the city like a shadow that didn't need applause. The crowd was still buzzing about the villain capture, still talking about heroes and danger and drama. But Izuku couldn't hear any of it. He could only hear his own heartbeat. He looked down at the card in his hand again. 3 months. No excuses. For the first time in a long time, hope didn't feel like a fragile fantasy. It felt like a schedule. It felt like a door. And Izuku, trembling, exhausted, and terrified, finally had somewhere to knock. The first thing Izuku learned about Aizawa's training was that it didn't feel like training. It felt like being hunted. He arrived 10 minutes early to the location on the card, an old municipal gym tucked behind a quiet park, the kind of place where the lights flickered and the vending machine probably sold snacks from 3 years ago. The air smelled like rubber mats and dust. The front desk clerk barely looked up when Izuku walked in. He found the back room empty, silent. He waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Izuku checked his phone again, heart thudding. Maybe he got the time wrong. Maybe he misread the card. Maybe. A soft tap landed on his shoulder. Izuku yelped and spun around. Aizawa stood behind him, expression flat, eyes half-lidded like he'd been there the entire time and only decided to exist when it was convenient. Izuku's face flushed. Sorry. I didn't hear you. That's the problem, Aizawa said. Izuku straightened instinctively. Yes, sir. Aizawa's gaze flicked over him like a scanner. Cheap sneakers, school bag, nervous posture. Then he turned away without ceremony. Come on, he said. Izuku scrambled after him. Where are we? Aizawa opened a side door and led him into a space Izuku didn't even realize was attached to the building, a narrow corridor that opened into a training hall. Mats covered the floor. Metal bars lined one wall. Climbing ropes hung from the ceiling. There was a low obstacle course assembled in sections, rails, platforms, a small wall, and a long strip of padded flooring dotting asleep was Aizawa's capture scarf. Izuku's eyes widened. He'd only ever seen it in action on TV or from a distance. Up close, it looked ordinary, which somehow made it scarier. Aizawa turned to him. First rule, he said. Stop thinking about the entrance exam. Izuku blinked. But, Aizawa raised a hand and Izuku shut his mouth. If you want to be a hero, Aizawa continued, your first enemy is your own body. You don't get to fight robots if your knees explode on landing. Izuku swallowed. Okay. Aizawa pointed at the obstacle course. Run it. Izuku stared. Run it, how? Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Without falling. Izuku nodded hard. Yes. He stepped forward, took a breath, and started. It was humiliating. His first vault was sloppy. His foot clipped the rail and he stumbled. He overcompensated, landed too hard, and his ankle jolted pain up his shin. He tried the wall climb and his fingers slipped because he didn't have the grip strength. He jumped down and the impact made his knees scream. By the time he reached the end, his lungs were on fire. He turned around, panting, expecting some kind of comment. Aizawa just stared at him. Again, he said. Izuku blinked through sweat. Again. Aizawa's expression didn't change. Izuku ran it again. He did a little better the second time. He adjusted his steps, shortened his stride before the vault, tried to roll instead of landing flat-footed. The roll was terrible. He slapped the mat with his shoulder and bit his tongue hard enough to taste blood. He got up anyway. Aizawa didn't praise him. Again. By the fifth run, Izuku's legs felt like wet sand. His hands shook. His breathing was loud and ugly. He fell twice. And every time he fell, Aizawa's voice stayed flat. Relentless. Again. Izuku didn't understand. Was this a test? Was Aizawa trying to break him? Was he proving some point? On the ninth run, Izuku's vision flashed white for a second. He stumbled, caught himself, and forced his feet to keep moving. When he finally reached the end, he didn't turn around right away. He just stood there, bent over, gasping. Aizawa's footsteps approached. Slow. Unhurried. You're trying to push through fatigue, Aizawa said. Izuku wheezed. Why yes. That's stupid, Aizawa said. Izuku froze. Huh. Aizawa crouched slightly, eyes level with Izuku's knees. He tapped the side of Izuku's leg with 2 fingers. Your landing is wrong, Aizawa said. Your knees collapse inward. When you're tired, your control gets worse. If you keep doing that, you'll wreck your joints before you ever see UA. Izuku stared, surprised. Aizawa wasn't yelling. He was diagnosing. Izuku swallowed. I thought heroes push through. Aizawa's eyes narrowed, irritated at the concept itself. Heroes live, he said. Martyrs die. There's a difference. Izuku's chest tightened. Aizawa stood, walked past him, and grabbed a water bottle from a crate in the corner. He tossed it to Izuku. Drink, he ordered. Then watch. Izuku caught it, hands trembling, and drank too fast. Water spilled down his chin, but he didn't care. Aizawa stepped to the obstacle course. He didn't run it at full speed. He walked. And as he walked, he demonstrated everything Izuku had been doing wrong, like he was taking apart a machine and showing Izuku where it would break. This is not parkour, Aizawa said. Stepping onto a platform. This is movement under threat. He hopped down lightly, knees aligned, weight distributed so the landing barely made a sound. When you jump, you don't slam into the ground. He continued. You arrive. He slid over a rail with an easy vault, hands barely touching. You don't fight gravity, he said. You negotiate with it. Izuku stared, mesmerized. Aizawa scaled the wall with a few controlled motions, not fast, just efficient. Then dropped down and rolled smoothly, absorbing impact through shoulder and back, popping up like nothing happened. Izuku's mouth hung open. Aizawa looked at him. You're not weak, Aizawa said. You're untrained. Izuku swallowed, throat tight. Aizawa gestured to the start line. Now you do it again, he said, but slower. Izuku blinked. Slower. Yes, Aizawa said. You can't do it fast if you can't do it correctly. Speed is a result, not a goal. Izuku nodded and stepped back to the beginning. This time, he focused on control. His vault was clumsy, but he placed his hands properly. He stepped onto the platform and forced his knees to stay aligned. He jumped down and tried to absorb impact through his hips instead of his joints. It still hurt, but it hurt less. He reached the wall and climbed with more thought than force, using his legs, not just his arms. He dropped down and attempted Aizawa's roll again. He didn't slam his shoulder this time. He rolled, messy, but functional. He stood up at the end, panting. Aizawa nodded once. It wasn't approval. It was acknowledgement. Better, he said. Izuku's heart jumped anyway. Then Aizawa's scarf moved. Not dramatically. Not like a snake striking. Just a sudden flick. The cloth snapped around Izuku's ankle. Izuku yelped and instinctively jerked. And his foot got yanked out from under him. He hit the mat hard, breath exploding out of his lungs. Aizawa's scarf loosened and retreated, coiling back near Aizawa like it was alive. Izuku lay there, stunned. Aizawa looked down at him. Second rule, Aizawa said. You are never safe. Izuku coughed, pushing himself up. You tripped me. Aizawa's expression stayed blank. A villain won't announce when they attack. Izuku's cheeks burned. Okay, I get it. Aizawa tilted his head. No, he said. You don't. Not yet. Izuku gritted his teeth and got up. Aizawa's scarf snapped again. This time it went for his wrist. Izuku flinched and twisted away, barely avoiding it. The cloth brushed his sleeve and missed. Aizawa's eyes narrowed slightly. Good, he said. Again. For the next hour, Izuku ran the course while Aizawa hunted him. The scarf snapped at his ankles, his wrists, his waist, never with enough force to injure, but enough to punish hesitation. Izuku learned quickly that panic made him slow. And slow made him caught. He started to anticipate the scarf. He started to watch Aizawa's shoulders, his fingers, the direction of his gaze. He started to recognize the tiny pre-movements before an attack. It wasn't combat. It was survival. By the end, Izuku's shirt was soaked. His hair was plastered to his forehead. His arms trembled from trying to catch himself. He collapsed onto the mat. Staring at the ceiling, Aizawa stood over him, scarf hanging loose around his neck. You lasted 12 seconds longer this time, Aizawa said. Izuku blinked, dazed. That's good. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Don't fish for praise, he said. Measure progress. That's all. Izuku swallowed. Yes, sir. Aizawa sighed like the word sir personally offended him, but he didn't correct it. Instead, he sat down on a bench nearby, elbows resting on his knees. For a moment, he looked almost human, tired, quiet, just a man in a room. Izuku hesitated, then forced himself to speak. Why are you doing this? He asked. Aizawa's eyes flicked to him. Izuku's chest tightened. I mean, you said it's not mentorship. But, you could have just told me to give up. Aizawa was silent for a long moment. Then he said, bluntly. Because you'll die if you don't learn. Izuku's throat tightened. Aizawa continued, voice flat but heavy. I've seen kids with quirks stronger than mine get hurt because they thought strength was enough. He said, I've seen people with big dreams freeze when it matters. And I've seen what happens to people who go into this job unprepared. Izuku stared. Aizawa's gaze sharpened. And you, he said, are walking toward Dango. Izuku swallowed, feeling exposed. Aizawa stood. Hope is not a plan, he said. If you want to be a hero without a quirk, you need a plan. You need discipline. You need control. He gestured to Izuku. And you need to stop thinking you'll win fights, Aizawa added. You won't. The words hit hard. Izuku opened his mouth. Aizawa raised a hand. You will win conditions. Aizawa said. You will win time. You will win space. You will win escape routes. You will win lives. Izuku's eyes burned. Because nobody had ever explained heroism to him like that. Not as glory. Not as power. As function. Aizawa glanced at the clock. Training is over, he said. Go home. Izuku struggled to stand, legs shaking. He bowed quickly. Thank you. Aizawa didn't respond. Izuku turned toward the exit. And Aizawa's voice stopped him. One more thing, Aizawa said. Izuku looked back. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Ua's exam is designed for quirks, he said. You're not going to outscore them by trying harder. Izuku swallowed. Then, how do I? Aizawa's scarf shifted slightly, like a resting predator. You outscore them by being useful, Aizawa said. You move better. You think faster. You save people they ignore. You get points they don't realize exist. Izuku's heart pounded. Aizawa stepped into the shadows near the wall. Tomorrow, he said. Same time. Bring better shoes. And bandages. Izuku nodded hard, clutching his bag like it was an anchor. As he walked out into the cold evening air, his legs shaking with every step, he finally understood something that made his chest ache in a new way. This wasn't about becoming strong. It was about becoming real. And for the first time in his life, Izuku felt like his dream wasn't a fantasy someone could laugh at. It was a skill set. A schedule. A war of inches. And tomorrow, the hunt would start again. Izuku showed up the next day with better shoes, bandages, and a new bruise in a place he didn't know could bruise. He also showed up with the most dangerous thing he owned. A notebook. It was thick, worn, and packed with notes so tight they looked like they'd been printed, not written. He'd added a new section overnight in shaking handwriting. Eraserhead training, rules. 1. Speed is a result. 2. 3. You are never safe. 4. 5. Hope is not a plan. 6. 7. Win conditions, not fights. 8. He'd underlined Rule 4 3 times. Aizawa was already in the training hall when Izuku arrived, sitting on the same bench, looking like sleep had personally insulted him. His capture scarf was looped loosely around his neck like a lazy threat. Izuku bowed. Good morning. Aizawa didn't look up. You're 2 minutes late. Izuku's soul left his body. What? I came early. Aizawa raised his eyes, dead calm. 2 minutes late for awareness. Izuku blinked. Awareness. Aizawa nodded toward the far wall. Izuku turned. There was a clock, and taped beneath it, in neat, brutal lettering. If you can see the clock, you should have seen me. Izuku swallowed so hard his throat clicked. Aizawa stood and walked past him like a ghost with a work schedule. Warm up, he said. Same course. Slow. Perfect form. Izuku did it. He focused on clean landings, knees aligned, breath controlled. His body still complained, but the pain was different now, less like damage, more like adaptation. When he finished, Aizawa was waiting near a metal storage cabinet Izuku hadn't noticed before. Aizawa opened it. Inside were crates. Not fancy ones. Not superhero tech lab ones. Plain gray cases, each labeled in block text like a warehouse inventory. Aizawa pulled one out and dropped it onto the mat with a heavy thunk. Izuku flinched. Aizawa looked at him like that flinch was information. Relax. Izuku tried. Aizawa flipped the case open. Inside was gear. Neat rows, foam-cut slots, everything in its place like it belonged there. Izuku's eyes widened as he registered what he was seeing. A compact grappling line launcher. Binding tape spools. A small pouch of discs, rubberized, textured. A few stubby cylinders with safety caps. A visor with a plain gray frame. Ear protection. A basic first aid kit. Nothing looked lethal. Everything looked useful. Izuku's mouth opened. Is this, for me? Aizawa's expression didn't change. It's for training. Izuku leaned closer, fascinated. These are, like support items. Aizawa nodded. Tools. Izuku's fingers hovered over the case, hesitant like he was about to touch a museum artifact. But, aren't tools kind of like cheating? Aizawa stared at him for 2 seconds longer than normal. Then he said, flatly, that's the dumbest thing you've said so far. Izuku stiffened. Sorry. Aizawa picked up the visor and held it out. You think my scarf is cheating? Aizawa asked. Izuku blinked. No. You think Endeavor's costume is cheating? Aizawa continued. You think Ingenium's armor is cheating? You think Smintos using the ground is cheating? Izuku opened his mouth, then shut it. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Heroes use what they have, he said. A quirk is just one category of tool. Izuku felt something shift in his chest. Not hope. Permission. Aizawa say. Tee the visor back down and tap the case. New rule, he said. Tools aren't cheating. Tools are responsibility. Izuku tilted his head. Responsibility. Aizawa picked up one of the small cylinders and tossed it lightly in his palm. This, he said, can create cover. Izuku's eyes tracked it. It can also blind a civilian, start a panic stampede, trigger an asthma attack, or make your teammate swing at the wrong target. Aizawa continued. A tool is a decision. Decisions have consequences. Izuku swallowed. So I have to learn when not to use them. Aizawa's gaze sharpened slightly, approval, microscopic but real. Yes, Aizawa said. And how to use them without becoming dependent. Izuku nodded slowly. Aizawa pulled out the grappling launcher. It was compact, manual, not a flashy wrist. T-cannon, more like a sturdy handheld with a spool mechanism. He pointed to a metal anchor point high on the wall. Grapple, he said. Izuku blinked. Now, yes. Izuku stepped forward, took the launcher with both hands, and tried to aim. His arms trembled, less from weakness, more from the pressure of knowing Aizawa was watching. He squeezed the trigger. The hook shot out, and clanged uselessly against the wall, bouncing off and dropping to the mat with a sad little rattle. Izuku winced. Aizawa cut him off. Again. Izuku aimed higher, adjusted his stance, fired again. This time the hook caught the anchor point. The line went taut. Izuku's eyes lit up. I did it. Aizawa's face remained unimpressed. Climb, Aizawa said. Izuku froze. Climb. Aizawa stared. You think this is for decoration? Izuku's brain ran through the physics in a panicked flash. Line tension, anchor strength, body weight, friction, hand burn. He grabbed the line and pulled. It bit into his palm immediately. Gloves, Aizawa said. Like he'd predicted the mistake before Izuku made it. Izuku scrambled to the case, yanked out a pair of gloves, shoved them on, and tried again. He climbed. Badly. His feet slipped. His arms shook. He got 2 steps up, then lost grip and dropped back down, landing awkwardly. Pain flashed in his wrist. Izuku hissed and shook his hand. Aizawa didn't move. He just said, again. Izuku tried again. This time he wrapped the line properly, used his legs more, kept his weight closer to the wall. He got higher. His arms screamed, but he reached the anchor point and touched it. Then he dropped down, panting. Aizawa walked closer, eyes scanning Izuku's hands. You burned through the gloves, Aizawa said. Izuku blinked and looked. Sure enough, the glove material had rubbed raw at the palm. He swallowed. So, the line Iong distances. It can be, Aizawa said. But not for you yet. Right now, it's for one thing. He stepped back and pointed across the room. Repositioning, Aizawa said. Escape routes. Getting out of reach. Izuku nodded, brain already rearranging. not a ladder. A doorway. Aizawa tossed him a spool of binding tape. Izuku caught it. The tape was thick, strong. Designed to hold without cutting into skin. Training grade, but still serious. What's your first instinct? Aizawa asked. Izuku blinked. Bind the villain. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. How? Izuku hesitated. Wrap their arms. Immobilize. Aizawa sighed like this was a math problem someone was answering emotionally. You don't bind strength, he said. You bind options. Izuku stared. Options. Aizawa stepped forward and, without warning, snapped his scarf toward Izuku's wrist. Instinct took over. Izuku jerked back, and Aizawa's scarf snagged his sleeve, yanking him forward half a step. Izuku stumbled. Aizawa's free hand tapped Izuku's shoulder. Dead, Aizawa said. Izuku's breath caught. What? How? You reacted, Aizawa said. You didn't decide. Izuku's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Aizawa backed up. Again. He snapped the scarf again. This time Izuku didn't just flinch. He moved sideways, trying to keep distance, trying to change angle. The scarf wrapped his wrist. Aizawa tugged. Izuku yanked back, and the scarf tightened. Aizawa's hand tapped his chest. Dead, Aizawa said. Izuku's face went pale. I couldn't. You fought the pull, Aizawa said. You made it stronger. Izuku stared at the scarf on his wrist like it was a snake. Aizawa released him and stepped back. Third attempt, Aizawa said. No panic. Izuku swallowed. His mind raced. If he pulls, don't pull back. Move with it. Use the motion. Change direction. Reduce tension. Attack the line. Create space. Aizawa snapped the scarf again. It wrapped Izuku's wrist. Aizawa tugged. Izuku moved with the pull. Stepping forward instead of resisting, twisting his forearm so the scarf's grip loosened slightly. Then he slapped binding tape around the scarf itself, sticky side out, anchoring it to his own sleeve and locking its movement. Aizawa blinked. Just once. Izuku used the moment to step to the side, forcing the scarf's angle to change. The tension dropped. He yanked his wrist free. He stumbled backward, panting. Tape still stuck to his sleeve. Aizawa stared at him. Izuku waited for the dead. Instead, Aizawa said, better. Izuku's heart jumped. Aizawa gestured to the tape. That's what I mean, he said. You didn't try to overpower it. You changed the condition. Izuku nodded, feeling lightheaded. So binding isn't just wrapping people. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Binding is controlling the battlefield. Izuku repeated it mentally like a spell. Aizawa moved back to the case and pointed at the rubberized discs. Pick one, he said. Izuku picked one up. It was slightly sticky, textured. Not sharp. Not dangerous. What is it? Izuku asked. Aizawa looked at him like the answer should have been obvious. Try to sprint, Aizawa said, and I'll tell you. Izuku blinked. What? Awa gestured toward the open strip of mat. Go. Izuku started running. Aizawa flicked the disc. It slid across the floor and landed under Izuku's foot at the worst possible time. Izuku's shoe hit it. His foot went out from under him. He crashed onto the mat with a grunt, skidding, arms flailing to protect his face. He lay there, stunned. Aizawa's voice floated down, completely calm. Trip hazard, he said. Izuku stared at the disc like it had betrayed him personally. Aizawa crouched near it. It won't stop someone who can fly. It won't stop someone who can melt through walls. It won't stop a tank type who doesn't care about falling. He looked at Izuku. But it will stop a normal person, Aizawa said. It will stop a speed type who doesn't watch their footing. It will stop a distracted villain. It will stop you if you're sloppy. Izuku pushed himself up slowly. So, it's not about making them weaker. It's about making them unstable. Aizawa nodded. Options. Always options. Izuku rubbed his shoulder, then glanced back at the gear. Are we allowed to use these in the entrance exam? He asked. Aizawa stood. Some, yes. Some, no. Depends on the rule set. Izuku's excitement flickered. Then I should. Aizawa cut him off. Don't build your plan around tools you might not have. Izuku nodded quickly. Right. So tools are backup. Aizawa's gaze sharpened again. Tools are force multipliers, Aizawa corrected. Not backup. Not crutches. Multipliers. Izuku repeated it mentally. Aizawa tapped the case. Now, He said, you're going to learn the part everyone forgets. Izuku blinked. Which is? Aizawa's eyes narrowed, tired but sharp. Using tools under stress, he said. Not when you're calm. Not when you're ready. When you're scared. Izuku swallowed. Aizawa walked to a corner of the training hall where a stack of storage bins sat. He lifted one lid. Inside were foam mannequins. Some adult-sized. Some child-sized. Izuku's stomach tightened a little. Aizawa pulled out a child-sized one and dropped it onto the mat. Then he placed an adult-sized one beside it. Civilians, Aizawa said. Then he dragged out 2 more mannequins, heavier, with red tape markings across the chest and arms. Threats, he said. He spaced them out in the room, creating a messy scene, like a chaotic street corner after something went wrong. Then he turned to Izuku. Scenario, Aizawa said. You have 30 seconds. Izuku's heart lurched. 30 seconds to do what? Aizawa's capture scarf twitched slightly. To get both civilians to the exit, Aizawa said, without being tagged by the threats. Izuku blinked. But the threats are mannequins. Aizawa stared at him. Izuku's brain clicked. You, Izuku said quietly. Aizawa's eyes glowed red. Me, Aizawa confirmed. Izuku's pulse jumped into his throat. Aizawa held up 2 fingers. 1, he said, I will not chase you the same way every time. He held up 3. 2, he said, your tools have limits. You get 3 deployments per scenario. He held up 4. 3, he said, if you touch the civilians wrong, you lose. Izuku blinked rapidly. Touch them wrong. Aizawa's gaze was cold. You don't drag someone with a broken arm, Aizawa said. You don't yank someone with a neck injury. You don't trip a child because you're rushing. Izuku swallowed hard. Hero work, Aizawa said, is not just speed. It's correct speed. Izuku nodded, mouth dry. Aizawa stepped back. Go, Aizawa said. Izuku moved. His mind exploded into analysis mode, but now it had a timer. Exit is there. Civilians are here. Threats are between. Aizawa will intercept. I need cover. I need line of sight breaks. I need to move the civilians safely. He grabbed the child mannequin first, lifting it properly, supporting the back and legs like he'd seen in rescue manuals. He moved fast but careful, feet light, eyes scanning for the scarf. The scarf snapped. Izuku dove sideways, barely avoiding it, and rolled, keeping the mannequin's head stabilized. He got behind a stack of mats. His breath came too fast. 30 seconds. Too slow. Need cover. He pulled a cylinder from his pouch, smoke. He hesitated. Aizawa's earlier words hit him, it can blind a civilian. But these weren't real civilians. Still, training meant training right. Izuku cracked the smoke canister and tossed it toward the center, not at Aizawa but between Aizawa and the exit. Oak bloomed outward in a thick gray cloud. Izuku moved immediately, using the cover to reposition. He set the child mannequin down near Ed back toward the adult mannequin. The scarf snapped through the smoke and wrapped Izuku's ankle. Izuku yelped, stumbled, and instinctively almost pulled back. Don't fight the pull. He moved with it, stepping forward, reducing tension, then slapped binding tape around the scarf again, sticking it to the floor mat. The scarf jerked. It didn't fully stop Aizawa, but it delayed. Aizawa's silhouette emerged from the smoke, annoyed. Izuku grabbed the adult mannequin, supporting it under the shoulders and knees, lifting like a proper carry. He ran. Aizawa lunged, scarf whipping. Izuku threw one of the slip discs behind him without looking. Aizawa's foot hit it. His stance shifted, just a fraction. And that fraction was enough. Izuku crossed the exit line and dropped the adult mannequin down carefully. He turned, panting. Aizawa's eyes dimmed. The smoke was still spreading. Aizawa stared at Izuku for a long moment. Izuku waited for the verdict. Aizawa checked the clock. 31 seconds, he said. Izuku's stomach sank. Aizawa tilted his head slightly. But, he said, you didn't get tagged. And you didn't injure the civilians. Izuku blinked, hope flickering. Aizawa's voice stayed flat. Which means you didn't fail, he said. You were just slow. Izuku exhaled shakily. Aizawa stepped forward and poked Izuku's forehead with 2 fingers, not hard, just enough to annoy him. You did one smart thing, Aizawa said. Izuku swallowed. The smoke. Aizawa nodded. You didn't throw it at me. Izuku blinked. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Aizawa's eyes narrowed. A lot of idiots think tools are attacks. They're not. He gestured at the smoke cloud. You used it to control space, Aizawa said. You made a wall without building one. Izuku nodded, eyes wide. Then Aizawa's tone sharpened. And you did one stupid thing, he said. Izuku tensed. What? Aizawa pointed at the adult mannequin. You picked it up, he said. Izuku blinked. That's wrong. Aizawa stared at him like he was about to teach him something painful. In the real world, Aizawa said. You don't always carry. Sometimes you drag. Sometimes you shield. Sometimes you mark the location and come back with help. Izuku's face flushed. But I thought. You thought Heroism is always doing the hardest thing, Aizawa said. It isn't. Izuku swallowed. Aizawa walked back to the case and tapped it again. Scenario 2, he said. Same layout. New rule. Izuku's heart pounded. What rule? Aizawa's eyes glowed red again. Smoke works both ways, he said. Izuku froze. Aizawa pulled the visor from the case and tossed it to him. Put it on, Aizawa said. Izuku put it on quickly. It was simple, clear. Not a supervisor with scanning mode. Just protection. Aizawa's voice stayed flat. You're going in blind, he said. And if you panic, you lose. Izuku's mouth went dry. Aizawa tapped the smoke canister with a finger. You used it like a wall, Aizawa said. Now learn what happens when the wall is yours. He stepped back. Go. Izuku moved, grabbed the child mannequin again, and immediately. Aizawa tossed smoke. The room flooded. Visibility vanished in seconds. Izuku's heart tried to climb out of his chest. I can't see. I can't see the exit. I can't see Aizawa. I can't. A scarf snapped out of nowhere. Izuku felt it brush his shoulder. He flinched, stumbled, and the child mannequin slipped. He caught it, barely, but the movement was messy. Aizawa's voice, somewhere in the fog. Panic, he said. Is noise. Izuku shut his eyes. Breathe. In. Out. The smoke muffled sound. But not completely. Izuku listened. Footsteps. Aizawa's footsteps weren't heavy. They were light, controlled. But they still had rhythm. Izuku shifted slowly, keeping the mannequin stable. He couldn't see the exit line, but he could remember the room layout. Exit is straight ahead, slightly left. Mats on the right. Rope rig near the back. One mannequin threat near the center. The scarf snapped again. Izuku dropped low and rolled, using the motion to keep moving. The scarf missed. Izuku's breath hitched. He placed the child mannequin down, hands gentle, then reached into his pouch and pulled out a slip disc. He tossed it in the direction he thought Aizawa was moving. A second later, a soft skid. Aizawa's movement hesitated. That hesitation was his map. Izuku moved. Fast, quiet, controlled. He reached the adult mannequin, set his shoulder under it, and instead of lifting fully, he dragged it carefully, supporting it while reducing weight. It was faster. His arms burned. The scarf snapped. It caught his sleeve. Izuku didn't yank. He turned with it, wrapped binding tape round the scarf and the adult mannequin's arm, sticking them together. The scarf tightened, then stopped pulling him, because it was pulling the mannequin too. Aizawa made a sound, barely audible, but unmistakably irritated. Izuku used that moment to shove the adult mannequin forward and cross what he hoped was the exit line. He didn't know. He couldn't see. Stop, Aizawa's voice said. Izuku froze instantly, breathing hard. The smoke thinned slowly. The room came back into view like a waking dream. Izuku looked down. He was across the exit line. Both mannequins were too. He turned, shocked. Aizawa stood a few feet away. Scarf hanging loose again, eyes no longer glowing. For a second, Aizawa just stared at him. Izuku waited, terrified of getting it wrong. Aizawa checked the clock. 28 seconds, he said. Izuku's mouth fell open. Aizawa's gaze sharpened. You listened, he said. Izuku swallowed. I couldn't see. Aizawa nodded. So you used what you had. Izuku's chest felt tight, like something inside him had been pulled into a new shape. Aizawa walked closer and tapped the visor. This, he said, doesn't make you a hero. It makes you a technician. Izuku blinked. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. And technicians, he said, save lives because they don't panic when the system fails. Izuku nodded slowly. Aizawa stepped back. Now, he said, write it down. Izuku fumbled for his notebook like it was oxygen. He flipped to a fresh page and started scribbling, hands still shaking. Smoke. Control space. Blinds everyone. Move by memory plus sound. Don't carry if drag is safer. Bind options, not strength. Don't fight pull, redirect it. Aizawa watched him write. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke again, quieter this time. You analyze because you're scared, Aizawa said. Izuku's pencil paused. Aizawa's voice stayed flat, but there was something sharper underneath it. Most people don't like admitting fear, Aizawa continued. They hide it behind power. Behind confidence. Behind noise. Izuku swallowed. Aizawa looked away, like eye contact was optional. You don't hide it, he said. You turn it into information. Izuku's throat tightened. Is that bad? Aizawa's gaze flicked back. No, he said. It's useful. Then he added, like it annoyed him to say it. As long as you don't let it freeze you. Izuku nodded hard. Aizawa checked the time again. Training's over, he said. Izuku blinked. Already. Aizawa's expression didn't change. Your body is shaking. If I push you now, you'll learn bad habits. Izuku opened his mouth, then closed it. Rule. Correct speed. Correct training. Aizawa walked toward the exit door, then paused. One more thing, he said. Izuku straightened. Yes. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. If you want UA, he said, you need to stop thinking like a fighter. Izuku blinked. Aizawa continued, calm and brutal. You're not winning fights. You're not trading blows. You're not proving anything. Izuku's stomach tightened. Aizawa's voice didn't soften. You're Busade. Recon. Control. Rescue. Team enablement. Izuku nodded slowly, understanding. Aizawa pointed at him. Your goal, he said, is to be the person other heroes are glad exists. Izuku's eyes stung. Aizawa turned the handle of the door. Tomorrow, he said. Same time. Then he looked back over his shoulder, eyes tired but sharp. In Midoriya, Izuku froze. Yes. Aizawa's scarf shifted slightly, like it was listening too. Bring your notebook, Aizawa said. But stop writing like a fan. Izuku blinked. Huh. Aizawa's expression stayed flat. Write like your life depends on it, he said. Then he left. Izuku stood there for a moment, alone in the training hall, smoke still lingering faintly in the air. He looked down at his hands. They were blistered. His arms ached. His legs felt like they were made of jelly. But for the first time, he didn't feel like he was chasing a dream made for someone else. He felt like he was building something real. Not strength. Not flashy power. A skill set. A role. A way to survive long enough to save people. Izuku closed his notebook slowly and whispered, barely audible. Tools aren't cheating. He looked at the exit line on the floor. And then, like a promise to himself, he added. Their responsibility. UA's front gates didn't look real. They looked like someone had built a monument to the word impossible, steel and stone and polished confidence. Looming over a crowd of teenagers who were trying very hard to pretend they weren't terrified. Izuku stood near the back of the gathering, hands clenched around the straps of his bag. His mouth was dry. His heartbeat was loud in his ears. All around him, quirks sparkled like fireworks. A boy's fingers crackled with electricity. Someone's hair floated as if gravity didn't apply. A tall girl casually lifted her suitcase with telekinesis like it weighed nothing. And Izuku. Izuku had a pair of reinforced running shoes, a small first aid pouch, and a carefully limited set of tools he'd checked 3 times for legality. No blades. No lethal deterrents. Nothing that looked like a weapon. Just binding tape, training grade but strong. Grappling line, manual launcher, short range. Slip discs, rubberized hazards. A visor and ear protection, basic safety. Aizawa's voice echoed in his head like a rule carved into bone. Don't build your plan around tools you might not have. Win conditions, not fights. Izuku stared up at the gate again. Okay, he thought. So what are the conditions? He'd studied UA's entrance exam format obsessively. Robots. Points for disabling them. A simulated urban zone. A time limit. He also knew the part most people ignored until it mattered. Rescue points. UA didn't advertise them loudly. They let the loud kids say the obvious points while they quietly watched who saved people. Aizawa had practically tattooed that lesson into Izuku's brain. Be useful. Save people they ignore. Get points they don't realize exist. Izuku swallowed. I can do this. A voice boomed from speakers near the entrance, cheerful and dramatic. Hey examinees. Welcome to UA. Hi. Present Mike's voice, impossible to miss, rippled through the crowd. A lot of kids flinched. A few laughed nervously. He continued, you're gonna be tested in our practical examination. Disable robots, get points. Time limit, 10 minutes. Let's go. The gates opened. The crowd surged forward like a wave. Izuku let the wave pass first. Not because he was slow. Because he wasn't stupid. Let the flashy ones draw attention. Let the chaos start. Then move. He stepped forward once the mass thinned, breathing slowly. Inside, the exam staging area was huge. Smooth concrete, tall walls, doors that looked like they belonged in a bunker. The air smelled faintly of oil and metal. Present Mike's voice crackled again. When those gates open, it's on. You ready? A countdown flashed on a screen. Izuku's throat tightened. He looked down at his hands. They were trembling. He forced them still. Aizawa said panic is noise. The gates ahead rumbled. And then, they opened. And the world turned into motion. Robots stomped into view like walking nightmares. Why weren't human-shaped, more like bulky machines with blunt limbs and obvious weak points. Some were small, some medium, some large enough to make the ground vibrate when they moved. Teenagers exploded forward with quirks blazing. Ice shot across the street. Explosions cracked the air. A kid with steel arms tore a robot in half like it was cardboard. Izuku stayed near the edges. He didn't rush into the center where the highest point robots spawned. He ran diagonally, using the buildings for cover, eyes snapping from robot to robot, mapping the flow like a battlefield. Okay. 1-pointers are small, 2-pointers are mid, 3-pointers are heavy. Disable means, stop movement. Doesn't have to be destroyed. A robot clanked around a corner, 1-pointer, turning its head like it was scanning. Izuku's heart jumped. He didn't charge it. He moved around it. He sprinted up a low ramp, jumped to a ledge, and dropped behind the robot as it passed. His hands moved automatically, binding tape around the knee joint, tight and fast. Sticky side out, layering to create friction. The robot took another step. Its knee snagged. It lurched. Izuku slid away before it could turn, and the robot collapsed forward with a metal crash. Limbs twitching uselessly. A small screen on the robot flashed red, disabled. A beep sounded from somewhere above, UA's scoring system. Izuku's chest tightened with relief. 1 point. He didn't celebrate. He moved. A 2-pointer rolled into view, bigger, heavier, with thicker armor plates. A student ahead of Izuku tried to blast it. His quirk sputtered under pressure, the shot missing. The robot raised an arm. The student froze. Izuku's whole body tensed. Don't freeze. He sprinted forward, not to fight the robot, but to change the condition. He threw a slip disc under the robot's stepping foot. It wasn't magic. It wasn't a perfect solution. But it didn't need to be. The robot's foot hit the disc mid-step, its balance algorithm adjusting too late. It staggered. The arm swing went wide, missing the student's head by inches. The student stumbled backward, eyes wide. Izuku grabbed their sleeve and yanked them behind a concrete pillar. Move. He snapped, voice sharper than he meant it to be. The student blinked, then ran, shaking. Izuku's pulse hammered. The 2-pointer recovered and turned toward him. Izuku didn't stand his ground. He ran. Not away. Around. He led the robot through a narrow alley where its wide shoulders scraped against the walls, slowing it. At the alley's end was a set of stairs. Izuku vaulted the railing, landed light, and sprinted upward. The robot tried to follow. Its foot hit a stair edge wrong. Its weight shifted. Its knee joint, a known weak point, took stress it wasn't designed for. Metal groaned. The robot toppled forward like a falling fridge, smashing into the stairwell wall. Its arms snapped off. Its head sensor flickered. Disabled. A scoring beep. Izuku exhaled hard. 2 points. He didn't get to enjoy it. Because a scream cut through the air. Izuku snapped his head toward the sound. A girl, pink cheeks, brown hair, had tripped near a street corner. A 1-pointer was closing in, slow but relentless. She scrambled backward, hands shaking, trying to stand. No quirk activation, just fear. Izuku's legs moved before his brain finished the thought. He sprinted down the stairs, cutting across the street. The robot's shadow swallowed her. Izuku didn't aim for the robot's chest. He aimed for its feet. He slid on one knee, slapped binding tape around both ankles, and pulled tight, locking them together. The robot took one more step. Its legs couldn't separate. It faceplanted. Hard. Izuku grabbed the girl's arm, firm but not yanking, and hauled her up. Can you run? He is at him, shocked. Why yeah. Then run, he said. Don't stop. She nodded and sprinted away, breathing ragged. Izuku turned back to the robot. It twitched, trying to rise, tape holding just enough to ruin its balance. He didn't stay. He moved on. Rescue points. That's rescue points. He found 2 more students pinned behind rubble. He directed them, quick and clear, toward a safer route. He didn't drag anyone unless he had to. He didn't play hero. He played efficient. His 10 minutes became a blur of calculated choices. He didn't rack up points like the powerhouses did, but every point he earned was clean. Every robot disabled was disabled without him taking a hit. And every time he saw someone freeze, he did the same thing Aizawa trained into him. Make a decision for them. Give them an exit. Then, the ground shook. Not from a robot falling. From something huge moving. A shadow rolled across the street like a storm cloud. Izuku looked up, and his stomach dropped. A 0-pointer. It rose at the end of the avenue like a walking building, metal plates layered like armor. Limbs the size of cars. Its head turned slowly, sensor lights scanning. People screamed. Some ran. Some froze. Some, idiots, rushed toward it because they thought this was their moment. Izuku's brain went cold and sharp. 0-pointers don't give points. They're obstacles. They're designed to test judgment. Aizawa's voice. Heroes live. Martyrs die. Izuku started moving away. Then he saw her. The same girl he'd pulled up earlier. She was down again, pinned by a chunk of debris that had fallen when the 0-pointer's foot hit the street. Her leg was trapped. As trying to lift the rubble with shaking arms. The 0-pointer's shadow crept closer. Izuku stopped. His whole body screamed at him to keep running. You can't fight that. You can't disable that. You'll die. Then another voice, quieter, but stronger, rose in his chest. If you leave her, she dies. Izuku's hands clenched. Aizawa's training didn't make him fearless. It made him functional. He sprinted toward her. The street shook again as the 0-pointer took another step. Its arm lifted, massive, casting a deeper shadow. Izuku slid to the girl's side, breath ragged. Hey, he said, voice tight but steady. Look at me. Her eyes snapped to his, wide and wet with panic. I'm stuck, she cried. I can't. Izuku swallowed. Okay, he said. Then we don't pull your leg. We lift the weight. He scanned fast. The rubble wasn't one piece. It was angled, wedged against a broken curb. There was a gap under one edge. A lever opportunity. Wind conditions. Izuku grabbed his grappling launcher, aimed at a streetlight pole above them. And fired. The hook caught. The line went taut. He ran the line down, looped it around the rubble edge, and anchored it, using the streetlight as a crude pulley. It was, in T strong enough to lift the whole chunk. But it didn't have to lift it all. It had to shift it. Izuku braced his feet, pulled the line with everything he had. His arms screamed. The rubble shifted an inch. The girl gasped. Now, Izuku barked. Slide your leg out, slow. She tried, teeth clenched. The 0-pointer's arm swung downward. Izuku's stomach clenched in terror. He yanked harder. The rubble shifted again. Her legs slipped free. Izuku grabbed her under the shoulders and dragged her backward, not yanking, but moving her body as a unit, protecting her injured leg from twisting. The 0-pointer's arm slammed into the street where they'd been a second ago. Concrete exploded upward. Dust blasted into the air. Izuku's ears rang. He didn't stop. He dragged her behind a toppled wall segment. And slapped his hands over her ears instinctively. Breathe, he ordered, voice shaking now. In, out. Stay with me. Her chest heaved. She nodded, sobbing. Izuku looked up. The exam zone was chaos. People sprinted away, some falling over each other. The 0-pointer turned, scanning for targets. Izuku's brain ran faster than his fear. I can't beat it. I can't disable it, but I can buy time. I can create an escape route. He scanned the environment like it was a puzzle. A construction scaffold on the side of a building. Loose beams. A stacked pile of concrete pipes. A narrow street corner leading toward the exit gate. If I can block the zero-pointer's path for even 5 seconds, more people get out. Izuku swallowed and made a choice. He turned to the girl. Can you crawl? He asked. She blinked. I think so. Crawl toward the gate, he said, pointing. Don't stand. Just crawl. People will help you once you're out of the main street. Her eyes widened. What about you? Izuku's hands trembled. He forced a shaky smile that wasn't All Might's bright confidence, just a small, stubborn curve. I'll be right behind you, he lied. Then he sprinted. Not toward the zero-pointer. Toward the scaffold. His feet pounded. Dust burned his lungs. His fingers fumbled with the grappling launcher again as he aimed higher, at a crossbeam. Hook caught. Line taut. He ran around a support post, looped the line, and pulled. Metal groaned. The scaffold shuddered. It wasn't enough. He needed leverage. Izuku grabbed binding tape, wrapped it around the line and the post, reinforcing the tension point so it wouldn't slip. His hands moved on autopilot. The zero-pointer turned, sensor lights sweeping toward him. Izuku's throat went dry. It saw me. A shadow fell over the scaffold. Its arm lifted again. Izuku didn't run. Not yet. He pulled with everything he had. The scaffold groaned, and the top beam snapped loose. It fell diagonally, slamming into the street with a heavy metallic crash, landing across a narrow section like a makeshift barrier. The zero-pointer's next step hit the beam. Its foot hesitated, not because it was stopped forever, but because its balance algorithm had to adjust. 1 second, 2, 3, that was all Izuku needed. He sprinted back toward the girl, grabbing her arm gently. Up, he said. Lean on me. She half hobbled, half crawled, and Izuku supported her weight, while keeping his body between her and the chaos. They reached the edge of the zone where other examinees were flooding out. Someone saw the girl and immediately helped, grabbing her other side. Izuku didn't even register who it was. He just kept moving until he crossed the boundary. The moment he did, his legs nearly gave out. He stumbled and caught himself on a wall, panting like his lungs had been replaced with fire. Behind him, the zero-pointer still moved. The scaffold beam wouldn't hold long. But people were getting out. That was the point. A loud buzzer blared across the exam zone. Time's up. Present Mike's voice shouted, still cheerful like he hadn't just watched half a city block get crushed by a giant robot. Exam over, exam over. Everyone exit the zone. Izuku leaned forward, hands on his knees, breathing hard. The girl he'd saved was sitting on the ground nearby now, supported by another examinee. She looked up at him, eyes wide. You, she whispered. You saved me. Izuku blinked, still trying to catch his breath. He didn't know what to say. So he said the truth. I couldn't leave you. Her lips trembled. Then she smiled, small and grateful. Thank you, she said. Izuku's chest tightened. In the distance, UA staff moved in with calm efficiency, medical support, containment systems, instructors guiding students. Up in the observation room, behind one-way glass, Nezu watched with bright, sharp eyes. Present Mike leaned forward. That kid, the quirkless one, did you see that? Aizawa stood behind them, arms crossed, face unreadable. Nezu's ears twitched. I did, he said. Interesting. Very interesting. Present Mike laughed. He didn't even try to fight the zero-pointer, he just. He saved someone, Nezu finished pleasantly. And he used the environment to buy time, rode slightly. Gaze fixed on the exhausted boy below. Present Mike's grin widened. Rescue points are gonna go crazy. Aizawa didn't smile. He just murmured, so quiet only Nezu could hear. He didn't freeze. Down below, Izuku stared at the gate, still breathing hard. He didn't know his score. He didn't know if UA would accept a quirkless kid no matter what he did. But he knew something else, something that felt heavier than points. He'd done the job. Not perfectly, not heroically, but correctly. And as he limped toward the exit with dust in his hair and his hands raw from rope burn, one thought kept repeating like a drumbeat. Win conditions, not fights. Behind him, the exam zone settled into silence. In front of him, the future waited. The UA acceptance letter didn't arrive with a choir of angels. It arrived the way destiny always seemed to arrive for Izuku Midoriya. in a plain envelope that looked too ordinary to change his life. He stared at it for a full 10 seconds before he touched it. Like it might disappear if he blinked too hard. His mom, Inko, hovered behind him in the hallway, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Izuku," she whispered, voice shaking. "Open it." Izuku swallowed, fingers trembling as he tore the flap. The paper inside was crisp, heavy, official. He unfolded it. "Read the first line." And his brain stopped. "Congratulations. You have been accepted into UA High School's hero course." Izuku made a sound that wasn't a laugh and wasn't a sob, something caught between breath and disbelief. He read it again. Then he covered his mouth because tears hit his eyes so fast it felt unfair. He croaked. Mom." Inko didn't even pretend to stay calm. She grabbed him, crushed him into a hug, and started crying like she'd been holding it back for 10 years. "You did it," she cried into his hair. "You did it, Izuku. You did it." Izuku's arms wrapped around her automatically. His chest hurt. His whole face felt hot. He wasn't thinking about fame. He wasn't thinking about rankings. He was thinking about a dusty training hall, blistered hands, and a tired voice saying, "Hope is not a plan." He pulled back, wiping his eyes with the heel of his hand, and looked down at the rest of the letter. There was a breakdown of points. Not just villain points. Something else. Rescue points, extremely high. Izuku's throat tightened. He didn't know exactly how Ua scored it. He didn't know who watched what. But he knew one thing. They saw it. They saw him choose people over points. They saw him do the job. His mom sniffled, trying to smile through tears. "I was so scared," she admitted, voice soft. "I was so scared you'd get hurt chasing something that the world keeps saying you can't have." Izuku swallowed hard and nodded. "I was scared too," he whispered. Then he looked at the letter again. "But I'm in." Inko hugged him again, gentler this time, like she was afraid he'd break, and Izuku closed his eyes, letting himself feel it for one breath longer. Then his brain kicked back on. And with it, a thought that made his stomach flip. Aizawa. He grabbed his phone, fingers hovering over the screen. He didn't have Aizawa's number. Of course he didn't. Aizawa wasn't the type of person who handed out contact info like candy. Izuku exhaled slowly. He didn't need to tell him. He'd show him. UA's front steps recrowded on the first day, hundreds of students streaming in, uniforms crisp, nerves buzzing. The building itself felt like it was watching. Izuku stood at the base of the stairs, backpack snug, tie slightly crooked because he'd retied it 3 times. His body felt different now. Not stronger in a magical way. Just trained. His posture was better. His balance was better. His breathing was better. His fear was still there. But it didn't own him. He started up the steps and immediately almost collided with someone moving fast. Sorry. A voice said. Izuku stepped aside automatically, shoulders turning. Feet adjusting, clean movement, no awkward stumble. A boy with dark blue hair and glasses stopped sharply and bowed like he was meeting royalty. "I apologize," the boy said with intense seriousness. "I was moving with insufficient awareness." Izuku blinked. "Oh, no, it's fine. I'm Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya." The boy straightened. "Tenya Iida. It is a pleasure. You're in Class 1A, yes?" Izuku nodded. "Yeah." Iida's eyes widened. "You're the examinee who assisted multiple candidates during the practical. I saw you redirect people away from an impact zone." Izuku flushed. "I just did what I could. That is precisely what a hero should do," Iida said, like he was delivering a speech to a classroom. Izuku smiled weakly. "Thanks." A lighter voice chimed in from behind. "Midoriya." Izuku turned, and his chest tightened. It was her. The girl from the exam. Brown hair, round eyes, pink cheeks. Uraraka Ochako. She hurried up, almost bouncing with excitement, then stopped in front of him with a grin so bright it made Izuku forget how to breathe. "You got in," she said. Izuku blinked. "You too." Uraraka laughed. "Yeah, I mean, obviously, right. But still, I wanted to say it properly this time." She bowed, awkward, cheerful, not formal like Iida but sincere. "Thank you," she said. "For the exam. I would have been crushed if you didn't." Izuku waved his hands quickly, panic rising. "No, You would have been okay. It was nothing. Uraraka shook her head. It wasn't nothing. You were, really cool. Izuku's face went nuclear. Iida adjusted his glasses. Indeed. Coolness aside, it displayed excellent judgment under pressure. Izuku felt like he was being evaluated by a committee. He cleared his throat. Thanks. Uraraka leaned closer a little, eyes sparkling. And you're quirkless, right? She asked gently, like she was afraid the word would hurt him. Izuku froze for half a beat. Then he nodded. Yeah. Uraraka didn't flinch. She didn't pity him. She just smiled. Then you're even cooler, she said, like it was the simplest math in the world. Izuku's chest did something weird. He didn't have time to analyze it, because a familiar explosion of presence hit the air behind them. Move. Bakugo Katsuki's voice was sharp and hot. Izuku's spine stiffened automatically. Bakugo pushed past other students like they were furniture, eyes burning, hands in his pockets like he owned the world. He glanced at Izuku, and his lip curled. TCH. Then he walked away, leaving a trail of tension behind him like smoke. Uraraka blinked. Wow, he's intense. Iida's posture went rigid. That is not an appropriate attitude for a hero candidate. Izuku swallowed. Yeah, he said quietly. He's Bakugo. And somehow, the word didn't taste like defeat this time. It tasted like a problem he'd survive. Class 1A's classroom was bright, clean, and dangerous. Dangerous because it was full of people who'd made it. People who belonged here. Izuku stood at the door for half a second, breathing in. Then he stepped in. He picked a seat near the middle, not hiding in the back, not arrogant in the front. His bag went under the desk. His notebook stayed in his backpack. Not because he didn't want it. Because Aizawa had told him to stop writing like a fan. So Izuku watched instead. He watched quirks show themselves in micro ways. A girl's hands popping with tiny sparks, a boy's skin shifting hard. Someone's hair moving like it had a mind of its own. He watched body language. He watched who made eye contact and who didn't. He watched who took up space. He watched Bakugo sit like a bomb with a pulse. And he watched himself. He didn't shrink. Then the door slid open. And the atmosphere changed. A man walked in wearing a capture scarf and a sleeping bag like a cape someone gave. Aizawa Shota. He looked exactly like he did in the training hall, tired, unimpressed, and completely uninterested in being inspirational. A hush fell over the room. Aizawa's eyes wept across the class like he was counting threats, not students. Then he spoke. I'm your homeroom teacher, he said flatly. Aizawa Shota. A few students perked up. Murmurs started. Aizawa raised a hand. Silence snapped back into place like a switch. You're expecting orientation, Aizawa said. You're not getting it. He tossed a gym uniform bag onto a desk. Change, he said. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. Confusion rippled. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. You came to UA to become heroes, he said. Heroes don't get warm-up speeches. They get problems. He turned. Move. The class scrambled. Izuku moved with them. Calm on the outside, heartbeat loud inside. This is it, he thought. This is where he tests whether I'm real. The training field was open and wide, wind brushing over it like a warning. Students lined up while Aizawa stood in front of them, hands in pockets, scarf loose. Today, Aizawa said, you show me what you can do. He gestured to a set of stations. 50-meter dash, grip strength, standing long jump, repeated sidesteps, softball throw, everything you did in middle school. Some students looked offended. Others looked amused. Aizawa's gaze stayed cold. The difference, he said, is that here. You use your quirks. A few smiles appeared. Then Aizawa added, almost lazily. The student with the lowest overall performance will be expelled. The smiles died. Uraraka gasped. Iida stiffened. Someone whispered, expelled. Like it was a myth. Izuku's stomach tightened, not because he couldn't perform at all, but because he understood something the others didn't. Aizawa's tests were never about numbers. They were about reaction, panic, decision-making. Don't be noise, Izuku thought. The first station, 50-meter dash. Students went one by one. A boy W.I.T.H. engine calves blasted forward like a rocket. Mineta bounced. Todoroki slid on ice like the world was a track made for him. Then Izuku's turn came. He stepped to the line. His lungs felt tight. Not fear. Focus. He set his feet the way Aizawa drilled, weight balanced, knees aligned, hips engaged. He didn't look at Bakugo. He didn't look at the other students. He looked at the finish line. Aizawa's voice cut through. Go. Izuku ran. Not like a hero. Not like a show-off. Like someone who had run the same course while being hunted by a scarf. His stride was clean. His footfalls were light. His breathing was controlled. He crossed the finish line, slowing without collapsing, hands on knees, chest heaving. He wasn't first. He wasn't even close. But he wasn't humiliatingly slow, either. A few students blinked at him like they'd expected a disaster and got something else. Bakugo's stare felt like heat on the back of Izuku's neck. Izuku ignored it. Next. Grip strength. Power types crushed the device like it was a toy. Izuku took it in both hands, braced, and squeezed with everything he had. The number wasn't insane, but it was better than his old self. Better than hopeless. Aizawa didn't react. He just wrote it down. Next. Standing long jump. Izuku remembered the first day he'd tried landing wrong and Aizawa calling him stupid. He didn't make that mistake now. He jumped, landed, absorbed impact through hips and core, and rolled just slightly to reduce strain. Not flashy. Functional. Next. Softball throw. This was the one everyone waited for because quirks made it ridiculous. Bakugo stepped up, palms sparking, and hurled the ball like it was a grenade with a timer. The number flashed high enough to make people whistle. Then Uraraka floated it. Then Todoroki froze the air. Then it was Izuku's turn. The ball sat heavy in his hand like an accusation. A quirkless throw was a human throw. He stepped up, rotated his shoulder, engaged core, used legs, everything Aizawa forced him to build. He threw. It sailed. Not far enough to impress the monsters around him, but far enough to be real. A few kids didn't laugh. That mattered more than distance. Then Aizawa called the class together again. They gathered, whined tugging at their uniforms. Aizawa stared at them, expression flat. Most of you, he said, think heroics is about output. He lifted a finger. It's about control, he said. The ability to choose the right action under stress. His gaze slid across them. And since all of you think you're special, he pointed to the ground. We're adding one more test. The class murmured. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. 60 seconds, he said. Avoid capture. Silence fell. Aizawa's scarf shifted slightly. He looked directly at Izuku. Midoriya, he said. You're first. Izuku's heart punched his ribs. Uraraka looked at him in surprise. Bakugo's eyes widened, then sharpened like blades. Izuku stepped forward. Aizawa stood opposite him, scarf loose, eyes half-lidded. To anyone else, it might have looked like a teacher bullying a kid. Izuku knew better. This was Aizawa checking if the training held up in public. Aizawa's voice was low enough only Izuku could hear. Don't make it obvious, he murmured. Izuku's throat tightened. So he is hiding it. Of course he was. Aizawa took a step back. Begin, Aizawa said. And the hunt started. Aizawa's scarf snapped toward Izuku's ankle. Izuku moved before it reached him, not panicked, not flailing. He cut sideways, changing angles, forcing Aizawa to adjust. The scarf missed by inches. A ripple ran through the class. Whoa, someone muttered. Aizawa didn't chase like a brute. He drifted forward like gravity, making Izuku's space smaller without rushing. Izuku's brain lit up with conditions. Don't get cornered. Keep line of sight breaks. Change elevation. He sprinted toward a nearby equipment rack and vaulted it, landing light on the other side. Aizawa's scarf wrapped around the rack instead of Izuku. Izuku ran. The scarf yanked the rack sideways like it weighed nothing. It skidded. Izuku felt the wind of it pass him. He ducked and rolled, popping up into a sprint again. His lungs burned. Aizawa's eyes glowed faintly red, reflexively. Even though Izuku had no quirk to erase, it made the class flinch anyway. Aizawa closed distance. The scarf snapped again, this time aimed higher. Izuku raised his arm, not to block, but to redirect. He slapped binding tape against the scarf mid-whip, sticky side catching. The scarf jerked, momentarily slowed by the tape's drag. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. The class went dead silent. Izuku used the half-second to slip past Aizawa's left side, moving close enough to feel the air shift, then darted away. Aizawa pivoted. Calm. Unhurried. and still terrifying. Izuku's heartbeat thundered. 50 seconds left. 40. I can't track time while running. He focused on the only thing that mattered. Don't get tagged. Aizawa snapped the scarf low again. Izuku jumped, clean, controlled, landing into a roll. He came up, and Aizawa was already there. Too close. Too fast. Izuku's instincts screamed to run. Instead, he did what Aizawa had drilled into him. He changed the condition. Izuku threw a strip of tape, not at Aizawa, but at the ground between them, sticky side up. Aizawa's foot hit it, not enough to stop him, but enough to make his step imperfect. One fraction of hesitation, Izuku slipped past again, breath ragged. The class erupted in whispers. He's dodging Aizawa. That's insane, but he doesn't have a quirk. Bakugo's face looked like it was cracking under pressure. Izuku ran. Aizawa's scarf snapped and wrapped Izuku's wrist. The pull hit. Strong. Clean. Izuku didn't fight it. He moved with it, but Aizawa was already stepping forward, closing the gap like a net tightening. Aizawa's hand reached out. 2 fingers touched Izuku's, Shudawa said. Izuku froze, chest heaving, eyes wide. He was caught, but he hadn't frozen. He hadn't flailed. He'd made Aizawa work. Aizawa released the scarf and stepped back like nothing happened. He checked a stopwatch in his hand. 34 seconds, Aizawa said. A low murmur rippled through the class. Aizawa looked at them, expression flat. That's longer than I expected, he said. Izuku's chest tightened at the words. Not praise, but not dismissal either. Aizawa turned to the class. Next, he said. And just like that, Izuku was dismissed. Legs shaking as he stepped back into the line. Uraraka stared at him like he'd grown wings. Iida looked impressed and alarmed at the same time. Bakugo looked like he was going to explode out of his skin. When the test ended, Aizawa gathered them again and displayed rankings on a screen. Names and numbers. Izuku wasn't near the top. He wasn't near the bottom either. He landed in the middle, higher than some students with quirks who relied on raw power and sloppy control. Aizawa stared at the screen, then at them. Your quirks are not excuses, he said. Your talent is not protection. He paused. Then he added, casually, like he was discussing weather. The expulsion threat was real. The class went pale. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. But I'm not expelling anyone today. Elif flooded the field so hard it almost made Izuku dizzy. Aizawa continued, voice sharp. Because I saw something worse than low numbers, he said. I saw panic. I saw wasted motion. I saw people would get civilians killed because they needed to win. His gaze drifted across the students like a knife. Fix it, he said. Then he turned and walked away. Like he hadn't just rearranged their souls. When they returned to the classroom, the tension didn't leave. It just changed shape. Students whispered about rankings. About Aizawa. About the capture test. About Izuku. Izuku tried to keep his head down. He was packing his bag when Bakugo's shadow fell over his desk. Izuku's stomach tightened. He looked up. Bakugo's eyes were burning. Explain, Bakugo said, voice low. Izuku swallowed. Explain what? Bakugo leaned closer. Hands clenched so tight his knuckles looked pale. That, Bakugo hissed. You dodging him. You moving like you're not trash. Uraraka stiffened nearby. Iida's posture snapped upright. Izuku kept his voice calm, even though his pulse was sprinting. I trained, Izuku said. Bakugo's laugh was sharp and mean. With who? Your mom. Izuku's jaw clenched. He didn't answer. Bakugo's eyes narrowed further. Like silence was an insult. You think you can waltz in here? Bakugo growled, act like you belong. I do belong, Izuku said quietly. The words came out before he could stop them. The room went still for a heartbeat. Bakugo's face twitched, like rage didn't know where to land. Uraraka stepped forward, cheeks pink but voice firm. Hey, she said. Back off. Bakugo didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed locked on Izuku like he was trying to burn the truth out of him. Izuku met his gaze. Not with arrogance. Not with defiance. With something worse for Bakugo. Stability. Bakugo's jaw clenched. TCH, he spat. Whatever. He turned away sharply, shoulders rigid, walking off like the floor itself annoyed him. The air exhaled. Uraraka looked at Izuku. Are you okay? Izuku blinked and realized his hands were shaking slightly. He forced them still. Yeah, he said. I'm okay. Iida nodded, serious. You handled that with admirable composure. Izuku gave a weak smile. Thanks. They started walking out together. Izuku glanced back once, toward the front of the room. Aizawa was there, leaning against the doorway, watching the class like a guard dog who didn't believe in affection. His eyes met Izuku's for half a second. Aizawa didn't nod, didn't smile. He just said, barely audible. Tomorrow. Same discipline. Then he walked away, scarf trailing behind him like a quiet warning. Izuku stood there for a beat, heart steadying. Tomorrow. More tests. More pressure. More people watching for him to fail. He tightened his grip on his bag strap. Good, he thought. Because for the first time in his life, he wasn't walking into pressure with only hope. He was walking in with a plan. The first time Izuku put on his UA hero costume, he didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a worker. Which, strangely, made him calmer. The costume wasn't flashy. No cape. No dramatic mask with a grin. No bright colors that screamed look at me. It was mostly dark gray and black. Built for mobility. Fitted jacket with reinforced seams, knee and elbow pads, gloves with better grip, and a simple visor that didn't look cool so much as useful. A compact utility belt held his taped spools, slip discs, and a small first aid pouch. There was one detail that made his throat tighten, though. A short scarf-like collar, just enough fabric to protect his neck and to tuck his face into when wind and dust hit. Not Aizawa's scarf. Not a copy. Just a reminder. Wind conditions. Not fights. When he walked into class 1A wearing it, heads turned. Some students looked surprised. Some looked curious. Bakugo looked offended, like the universe had committed a crime by letting Izuku wear anything that looked remotely professional. Uraraka brightened instantly. Midoriya, that looks really cool. Izuku flushed. Ah, thanks. It's mostly just, practical. Iida nodded with intensity. Practicality is the foundation of heroics. Excellent decision-making. Thanks, Izuku said, trying not to melt. Aizawa didn't comment at all. He just stared at the class like they were a messy equation and said, "Today we're doing rescue training." Everyone perked up. Not fake rescue, Aizawa added. Not, pretend you care, rescue. The class went quieter. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Real rescue priorities, he said. Triage. Evac routes. Threat assessment. If you think being a hero means punching villains until the world claps, you're in the wrong place. Then he looked straight at Izuku for half a second. Especially you, he said, like he was talking to the whole class, but the words landed heavier on Izuku's shoulders. Izuku swallowed. He understood. Training was one thing, terror was another. And sooner or later, UA was going to see which one owned you. The USJ, unforeseen simulation joint, was enormous. It was less, training field, and more, contained disaster world, with different zones built to mimic real environments, a flood area, a burning collapse, a landslide, an industrial wreck. Izuku stood at the entrance with the rest of the class, looking out at it like it was a city inside a dome. 13, calm, kind, space-suited, stood near the center platform. All right, everyone, 13 said warmly. Today is rescue training. Remember, rescue is about saving lives, not fighting. Aizawa sat on the steps behind them like a tired gargoyle. Don't relax, he muttered. The class laughed nervously. All Might was supposed to be teaching today. The symbol of peace. The living poster of heroism. But he wasn't there. Aizawa had mentioned it earlier in a bored voice. All Might had an emergency. He'll be late. Quote. Most students were disappointed. Izuku felt, oddly relieved. Because heroes like All Might made the world feel simple. And Izuku was learning, painfully, that hero work wasn't simple at all. 13 continued explaining rescue points, danger zones, and the importance of not overusing quirks in fragile environments. Izuku listened closely, eyes tracking exits, stairwells, sightlines. Old habit. New purpose. Then Aizawa's posture changed. Just slightly. A micro shift that made Izuku's skin prickle. Aizawa's eyes narrowed toward the far wall of the dome. Izuku followed his gaze. The air shimmered, like heat distortion. Then the ground at the center of the platform rippled. Fog opened like a wound in reality. Silence hit the class for one stunned heartbeat. A figure stepped out of the fog. Then another. Then dozens. Villains. Not training bots. Not simulation dummies. People with killer body language and hungry eyes. Izuku's blood went cold. 13 froze mid-sentence. Aizawa stood up. And in that moment, Izuku understood the difference between a teacher and a pro hero. Aizawa didn't look surprised. He looked annoyed, like someone had interrupted his work. The fog widened again. A towering man in a hand-covered coat stepped forward, posture lazy, voice rough like it hadn't been used for kindness in years. "Wow," the man said. "So this is UA. Shigaraki Tamura." Izuku didn't know his name yet, but he recognized the vibe instantly. This wasn't a thief. This was a disaster looking for a place to happen. Shigaraki's gaze slid over the students like they were groceries. "Where's All Might?" he asked, casual as ordering food. 13's voice trembled. "Students, behind me." Aizawa stepped down from the stairs, scarf already slipping free. 13, Aizawa said, voice flat. "Protect them." 13 stiffened. "Aizawa. I'll handle the front," Aizawa said. Izuku's heart hammered. Aizawa is going alone. He'd seen Aizawa fight once in the street. That had been a single villain. This was an army. Aizawa's eyes flicked back to the class, quick, sharp. His gaze landed on Izuku. Not for comfort, for instruction. Izuku knew that look now. Don't freeze. Don't be noise. Make decisions. Then Aizawa moved. His scarf snapped out like a living thing, whipping through the first line of villains. His eyes glowed red. Quirks died. Bodies fell. Aizawa's movement was surgical violence, twisting limbs, binding ankles, dropping people before they realized they'd been defeated. Students gasped. Someone whispered, "Eraserhead." Izuku's chest GHTENED with something like pride and dread mixed together. And then, Kurogiri moved. The fog villain, the one that looked like a humanoid void, shifted and expanded. The ground beneath the students warped. A black portal opened under their feet. 13 shouted, "No." Izuku's stomach dropped. The world flipped. Gravity vanished. Izuku reached out instinctively. His glove caught Uraraka's wrist for half a second. Her eyes widened. Then the pull yanked them apart. Izuku's fingers slipped. He fell into darkness. He hit water. Cold, heavy, shocking. Izuku gasped and nearly inhaled it. He kicked upward on instinct, breaking the surface with a cough, hair plastered to his forehead. The USJ dome ceiling loomed above, distant lights reflecting on rippling water. He wasn't on the main platform anymore. He was in the flood zone. Around him, chunks of fake ship and dock bobbed. A scream cut the air. Izuku spun. Tsuyu Asui surfaced nearby, calm even while wet, blinking like this was mildly inconvenient. Mineta splashed beside her, panicking like his soul was trying to escape. "We're gonna die." Mineta shrieked. Tsuyu grabbed his collar and yanked him closer. "Calm down." Izuku's chest heaved. Villains were on floating debris around them, moving in. Some had fins. Some had strange eyes. One of them grinned like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Tsuyu's gaze snapped to Izuku. "Midoriya, you okay?" Izuku swallowed water and nodded. Yeah, I'm okay." He wasn't. But he was functional. He scanned fast. "We're separated. Villains are aquatic types. Mineta and Tsuyu can move in water better than me. My gear, tape works wet. Slip discs useless. Grapple line could help if we can reach a pillar or ship mast. Smoke is useless here." Mineta shrieked again. They're coming. Tsuyu's eyes narrowed. "They're aiming for us because we're isolated." Izuku forced air into his lungs. "Aizawa told us rescue priorities," Izuku said quickly. "So we do the same. We don't fight them in water." Mineta blinked at him like he'd forgotten English. Tsuyu's gaze sharpened. "Then what?" Izuku pointed toward a tall concrete pillar near the flood edge, support structure for the dome. "We get to the pillar. Climb out. Get to higher ground. Water is their advantage." Mineta splashed. "How? I can't swim that far." Tsuyu's expression stayed calm. "I can." Izuku's brain moved faster. "I have a grapple," Izuku said. "If I can hook it to the pillar, we can pull ourselves across faster." Mineta's eyes widened. "You have a what?" Izuku didn't answer. He grabbed the launcher, aimed at the pillar. His hands were shaking from cold and adrenaline. He forced them still. Correct speed. He fired. The hook flew, clanged, skipped off the concrete and fell into the water. Mineta wailed. "We're dead." Suyu slapped his head lightly. Stop it. Izuku inhaled sharply. Aiming wrong. Concrete is slick. Need an anchor point. He scanned the pillar. A metal maintenance ring near the base. Small. Hard to hit, but possible. Izuku adjusted angle, waited for the water sway to line up. Then fired again. The hook caught the metal ring. The line went taut. Izuku exhaled. Got it. Villains splashed closer. One of them lunged. Suyu's tongue snapped out, fast as a whip, wrapping the villain's wrist and yanking him sideways into the water. He splashed and cursed. Izuku didn't watch the fight. He watched escape. Line. Izuku said. Suyu, you first, fast. Suyu nodded, grabbed the line, and pulled herself forward with strong kicks. She moved like she belonged in water. Mineta clung to the line, whimpering. And Izuku shoved him ahead. Go. Izuku snapped. Or you really will die. Mineta splashed and moved, terrified but motivated. Izuku went last, hands burning through wet gloves as he hauled himself along. The water tugged at his legs like hands. Something brushed his ankle. Izuku's heart jumped. A villain's hand. He kicked hard, connecting with something solid enough to make the villain hiss and let go. Izuku reached the pillar, clinging to rough concrete. Suyu was already climbing. Mineta was scrambling like a panicked grape. Izuku grabbed the line spool, clipped it, and started climbing too. Using legs more than arms, Aizawa's voice in his head, don't wreck your joints. Arrive, don't slam. Villains gathered below, looking up, frustrated. One of them spat. Run, run, doesn't matter. We only need to stall you. Izuku's blood ran cold. Stall. They don't need to kill us. They just need to keep us trapped until All Might arrived. Until Shigaraki got what he wanted. Izuku hauled himself onto the flood zone edge, chest heaving. Suyu looked back down. We need to regroup. Izuku nodded sharply. We find other students. We get to Aizawa. A roar shook the dome. Not from the flood zone. From the central plaza. It was deep and monstrous, vibrating through the air like a warning siren. Suyu's eyes widened. Mineta's face turned green. What was that? Izuku's stomach twisted. Whatever it wasn't a normal villain. They ran through a corridor connecting zones, wet footsteps echoing, emergency lights flickering. Izuku's visor was fogged. He wiped it quickly with his sleeve. They turned a corner and almost collided with a group of villains patrolling. Suyu tensed, ready to fight. Izuku's brain snapped to options. We can't waste time here. Don't fight unless you must. Control space. He reached for smoke, then stopped. Smoke in a corridor could blind them too. But corridor also meant choke point. Narrow. Confusion could buy seconds. He made a decision. Izuku tossed the smoke canister behind the villains, not in front of them, blocking their retreat sightline and forcing them to react. Smoke blossomed. Villains shouted, startled. Suyu grabbed Mineta and Izuku with her tongue, yanking them sideways into a maintenance alcove. Izuku hit the wall, breath knocked out. Suyu whispered, niece. Izuku Bliut steps thundered past in the smoke, villains swinging wildly at nothing. Izuku waited 3 heartbeats. Then he moved. They slipped out and ran the opposite direction, using the chaos like a curtain. Tools aren't attacks. They're decisions. They reached a broken viewing window overlooking the central plaza. Izuku's breath caught. Below, the plaza was a war zone. Villains swarmed everywhere. Students were scattered in groups, fighting, retreating, protecting each other. And at the center, Aizawa stood alone, scarf whipping, eyes glowing, bodies dropping. He was doing the impossible, holding a crowd back by sheer control. But he was bleeding, not dramatically, not movie style, just small cuts, a bruise swelling, his movements slightly heavier. He was tired. And behind the villains, Shigaraki stood like a bored king. Beside him was something else. A creature. Huge, muscular, grotesque, stitched skin, blank eyes, power built like a weapon. A Nomu. Izuku didn't know the word, but his instinct screamed it. That thing is designed to kill All Might. Suyu's voice tightened. That monster. Mineta whimpered. We're gonna die. Izuku's chest felt like it was being squeezed. Aizawa got grabbed by a villain from behind, just for a second, and his eyes blinked. His quirk dropped. For a fraction of time, villains' quirks flared. And Aizawa's scarf slowed. The swarm surged. Izuku's throat went dry. Aizawa is going to get overwhelmed. Suyu looked at Izuku, reading his face. Midoriya, don't. Izuku didn't answer. Because his body was already moving. Not jumping off like an idiot. Not charging into the center like a martyr. But shifting position. Scanning for a win condition. What can I do that changes the condition? Not, beat them. Not, save everyone. Just, buy time. He looked for an opening. A pipe stack above the plaza. A suspended catwalk. A bundle of construction lights. A fire suppression system. His eyes locked onto a maintenance panel. Emergency sprinkler controls. If he could trigger it, the plaza would flood with water, messing with visibility. Traction, and coordination. It wouldn't stop quirks. It wouldn't defeat villains. But it would disrupt them. It would make Aizawa's job easier by making everyone clumsier. Suyu grabbed his arm. Midoriya. Izuku met her eyes. I'm not going down there, he whispered. I'm going sideways. Suyu blinked. Izuku pointed to the maintenance panel. Cover me for 10 seconds. Suyu hesitated, then nodded once. Sharp. Okay. 10 seconds. Mineta clung to Suyu's sleeve like a terrified parasite. Izuku sprinted along the upper walkway, staying low, using railings and shadows. Villains on the upper levels were fewer, but not absent. One spotted him. Hey! Izuku didn't engage. He tossed a slip disc at the villain's feet and kept running. The villain slipped, crashed into a railing, cursed loudly. Izuku reached the maintenance panel and yanked it open. Wires. Switches. Labels. His hands moved fast. He'd studied rescue systems. He'd read manuals for fun. He'd said over emergency infrastructure like other kids obsessed over games. He found the switch. Fire suppression. Central Plaza. He hesitated for half a heartbeat. Water helps villains too. It helps the Nomu maybe. It could cause panic. It could make students slip. Then Aizawa took a hit, hard, thrown into a pillar below. Izuku's hesitation died. He flipped the switch. A loud alarm blared. And a second later, sprinklers erupted overhead. Raining down in sheets. The plaza became a storm. Villains shouted, startled. Some slipped. Some stumbled. Visibility dropped. For a moment, coordination shattered. Aizawa recovered, scarf snapping. Catching a villain's ankle and yanking him down into the wet concrete. He turned his head, eyes scanning upward. And for a split second, his gaze found Izuku on the catwalk. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Not angry. Not grateful. Just, sharp. As if saying, good. Now don't die. Izuku's chest tightened. Then a villain on the upper walkway lunged at him, fast, blade-like fingers. Izuku twisted away, barely avoiding a slash that would have opened his arm. He felt the wind of it. Fear punched his spine. Okay. 10 seconds or over. He ran. Suyu snagged his waist with her tongu. Ian yanked him back behind cover right as the villain swung again. Izuku hit the floor, breath knocked out. Suyu's voice was tight. That was 9 seconds. Izuku coughed. Good. Mineta stared at him like he was insane. You're a maniac. Izuku wiped water off his face, hands shaking. Down below, the sprinklers kept raining. Aizawa moved better now, not because he wasn't tired, but because the villains were less coordinated. But Shigaraki didn't look bothered. He just tilted his head slightly, irritated, and said something to Kurogiri. The fog villain shifted. A new portal opened, right behind Aizawa. Izuku's stomach dropped. No, he whispered. The Nomu moved. It lunged like a missile. Aizawa turned, too late. The Nomu's fist hit him. Aizawa flew across the plaza and slammed into the grow. Ooned hard enough to make the wet concrete splash. The class below screamed. Izuku's heart stopped. Suyu's eyes widened in horror. Mineta started crying. Izuku's whole body went cold. This wasn't training. This wasn't a simulation. This was a pro hero, his teacher, getting crushed by something built to kill legends. Shigaraki's voice drifted up through the storm, calm and ugly. Now, he said, we wait for All Might. Izuku's hands clenched so hard his gloves creaked. He couldn't fight the Nomu. He couldn't beat Shigaraki. He couldn't save everyone. But he could still do what Aizawa trained him to do. Win conditions. Izuku turned to Suyu, voice shaking but steady. We have to regroup the class, he said. We have to get help. We have to get Aizawa out. Suyu swallowed. How? Izuku's eyes scanned the chaos. Searching for one thing. A way to buy time. A way to create space. A way to keep people alive until the symbol of peace arrived, or until they could escape. Then, a booming voice echoed through the dome. I am here, All Might. He arrived like thunder. And Shigaraki's grin sharpened like a knife. Izuku's breath hitched, because the real fight was about to start. And Izuku Midoriya, quirkless, exhausted, soaked, shaking, had to figure out how to survive a battlefield meant for gods. Ua didn't give them time to recover. That was the first thing Izuku noticed after USJ. There were no long speeches about trauma. No weeks of rest and reflect. No comforting assembly where teachers promised everything would be fine. There was paperwork, medical checks, police statements, and, like the school itself refused to show weakness, UA announced. The sports festival will proceed as scheduled. The reaction outside UA was instant. News vans camped outside the gates like vultures. Helicopters circled. Protesters argued with fans. Some people called UA reckless for hosting a massive public event after an attack. UA's official stance was simple. We will not hide. Which, translated, meant, we will not let villains decide what fear controls. Izuku understood the logic. He just didn't know how to feel about it. Because every time he closed his eyes, he saw Aizawa getting hit. Bow. Dai launched across wet concrete like he weighed nothing. Aizawa survived. Barely. The day after USJ, Izuku visited Recovery Girl's wing with a knot in his stomach that felt like it had teeth. Aizawa was sitting up in bed, wrapped in bandages like someone had tried to mummify him out of spite. His hair was messier than usual. His eyes looked even more tired. He didn't look heroic. He looked human. Izuku hovered awkwardly at the door. Aizawa's gaze flicked toward him. If you're here to apologize, don't. Izuku blinked. I wasn't. You did what you were supposed to, Aizawa said. His voice was flat, but there was something heavy underrush the Nomu. You didn't try to save me by getting yourself killed. Izuku swallowed. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. And you flipped the sprinklers. Izuku's stomach dropped. I'm sorry. Aizawa's stare sharpened. I didn't say it was bad. Izuku froze. Aizawa looked away toward the window. It was annoying, he muttered. But useful. Useful. That single E-word hit Izuku harder than praise ever could. Aizawa continued, tone still dry. Now listen. Izuku straightened automatically. The sports festival is coming, Aizawa said. You're going to be tempted to perform. Izuku blinked. Perform. Aizawa's eyes returned, sharp as ever. Big crowds. Cameras. People cheering. It makes idiots forget what they are. Izuku's throat tightened. What am I? Aizawa stared at him. A student, he said. A minor. A target. Izuku's blood ran cold. Aizawa's voice didn't soften. Villains watched USJ. Some of them will watch the festival. If you stand out, you get noticed. Izuku swallowed hard. Aizawa added, almost like it annoyed him to say it. If you're going to be noticed, he said, make sure it's for the right reasons. Izuku nodded, heart pounding. Aizawa's gaze narrowed. And Midoriya, he said. Izuku froze. Yes. Aizawa's voice dropped slightly. Don't let the crowd rewrite your plan, he said. Izuku's hands clenched. I won't. Aizawa leaned back into the pillow like holding that conversation cost him energy. Good, he muttered. Now leave. You're blocking my air. Izuku bowed quickly. Get well soon. Aizawa didn't respond, but as Izuku turned to go, he heard Aizawa's voice, quiet, almost reluctant. You did fine. Izuku's breath caught. He didn't turn back. He didn't need to. He carried the words out with him like a shield. The sports festival arrived like a punch to the senses. The stadium was massive, packed with tens of thousands of people, roaring like a living creature. Spotlights swept the air. Giant screens displayed student faces. Food stalls lined the outer ring. The crowd was a sea of excitement and curiosity. Pro heroes sat in the VIP section like predators in suits. Cameras everywhere. Izuku's throat tightened. As he walked through the tunnel with Class 1A, all of them in their costumes. Bakugo looked like he wanted to fight the world. Todoroki looked like a statue. Uraraka kept bouncing nervously. Iida Street. Ood rigid like he was representing a nation. Izuku felt quiet, not calm. Quiet. The difference mattered. President Mike's voice boomed through the speakers like an earthquake. Welcome, Ladies and gentlemen, to UA's sports festival. The crowd screamed. Izuku's stomach flipped. He glanced up toward the VIP section and, for a second, thought he saw Aizawa sitting there, bandaged, unimpressed, eyes half-lidded. Of course he's here, Izuku thought. Of course. Aizawa wasn't going to miss the moment the world decided who was worth watching. Present Mike continued with dramatic flair. Today, these students will fight, with pride, with passion, with everything they've got. Izuku's hands clenched. Everything I've got isn't a quirk. He inhaled slowly. Everything I've got is a plan. Event 1, Obstacle Race. The starting line was chaos. Students from every course packed together, hero, support, general studies. Hundreds of bodies. Hundreds of quirks. Izuku stood near the middle, eyes scanning. He wasn't looking at opponents. He was looking at terrain. Ahead, a long track broken into 3 stages, each one designed to punish arrogance. Present Mike shouted, "On your marks." Izuku shifted his feet. KAGOOOO. The starting gun wasn't a gun. It was the crowd erupting as everyone surged forward. Izuku didn't fight the surge. He moved with it, sidestepping the first stampede, slipping into a gap like water finding a crack. The first obstacle hit immediately. Giant robots. Not exam bots. Bigger. Heavier. They stomped into the track like walking buildings. Students screamed and scattered. Some idiots attacked them directly. Izuku's brain went cold and sharp. They aren't here to be beaten. They're here to funnel us. He spotted the patterns. How the robots' feet created safe zones, brief windows where the ground behind a step was clear. But only for a second. He ran, not forward blindly. Diagonal, timed to the rhythm of the robots' strides. He used the shadows like timing markers. A foot slammed down to his left. Izuku sprinted through the open lane it created, then vaulted a chunk of broken concrete. Behind him, a student got clipped and sent flying. Izuku didn't look back. Not because I don't care, he thought. Because if I stop, I become another casualty. He reached the edge of the robot zone and immediately hit obstacle 2. The minefield. Metal plates embedded in the ground, wired to explode into harmless, but forceful, air blasts. Students tried brute force. Explosions popped. Bodies bounced. Izuku slowed. Not much. Just enough. He watched other people trigger mines, mapping which plates were active. Then he moved in their wake, stepping where blasts had already gone off, safe lanes carved by other people's mistakes. A student to his right tried the same idea and got blasted sideways. Izuku adjusted mid-step, rolled. Came up running. His knees stayed aligned. His landing was quiet. He heard Aizawa's voice in his head like a metronome. Arrive, don't slam. Then obstacle 3. The chasm rope bridge. A wide gap with thin ropes stretched across, unstable, swaying, designed to punish anyone who relied on one big jump. Students with flight quirks sailed over. Others struggled. Izuku didn't hesitate. He clipped his grappling line to an anchor point near the edge, not to swing across like a superhero, just to stabilize. He stepped onto the rope, legs shaking slightly as it moved. He kept his weight low. He moved with the sway instead of fighting it. Halfway across, someone behind him panicked and grabbed the rope too hard, making it jerk. Izuku's balance wavered. He didn't flail. He dropped his center of gravity, let the rope swing under him, then recovered with a controlled step. He reached the far side and unclipped cleanly. When he hit solid ground again, he didn't stop. He ran. The finish line came into view like a promise. Izuku crossed it somewhere in the top group. Not first, not anywhere near Todoroki's absurd lead, but high enough that the scoreboard flashed his name. For a fraction of a second, the stadium went quiet in confusion. Then Present Mike's voice cracked through. Midoriya Izuku, quirkless, makes it through in the top ranks. The crowd erupted. Not all cheers. Some were shocked laughter. Some were angry. Some were thrilled. Izuku's stomach dropped. Noticed. He glanced up at the VIP section. Some pro heroes leaned forward now, eyes interested. Aizawa's gaze was locked on him. Expression unreadable. Izuku exhaled slowly. Right reasons, he reminded himself. Make it the right reasons. Event 2, Cavalry Battle. Teams of 4, 1 rider, 3 horses. Headbands worth points based on your placement in the obstacle race. The goal, steal headbands. Chaos is a sport. Izuku stood in the team assignment area, surrounded by students. Getting recruited like this was an auction. Uraraka hurried up to him first. Midoriya, team up with me. Iida stepped in immediately. We must form a team based on complementary skill sets. Izuku's brain clicked fast. Uraraka, gravity control, mobility, stealing, defense. Iida, speed, intercepts, burst movement. They needed one more. Someone with control. Someone who could create a threat zone. Tokiyami stepped closer. Dark shadow flickering like a living shadow behind him. Midoriya, he said quietly. Your strategy interests me. Izuku blinked, surprised, then nodded. Okay, Izuku said quickly. Uraraka, Iida, Tokiyami. All right. Uraraka's eyes widened. You're writing. Izuku nodded. And if I get grabbed, I can respond fast. Iida looked alarmed. Midoriya, this is extremely risky. It's less risky than you writing, Izuku said. You'd charge forward and get overwhelmed. Iida stiffened, then nodded reluctantly. That is a fair point. Tokiyami's voice was calm. A writer who thinks. Acceptable. They formed up. Izuku climbed onto their backs, balancing carefully, hands light, posture stable. He tied their headbands in a specific way. Not one layer, but multiple, decoy strips hidden under the main band. Uraraka blinked. Why so many? Izuku whispered, if they grab wrong, they waste time. Time is points. The match started. Instant chaos. Teams collided like storms. Bakugo's team exploded forward like a missile. Todoroki's team created an ice field that turned half the arena into a skating rink. Izuku's team didn't charge. They moved like a unit. Tokiyami held a defensive perimeter with dark shadow, forcing teams to approach carefully. Iida dashed out for quick steals, then returned. Uraraka floated them over clusters of chaos, dropping them into safe lanes. Izuku called directions in short, sharp commands, not yelling, just clear. Left, now, hold, bait them. Iida, steal and return. Tokiyami, pressure, don't commit. They stole headbands from mid-tier teams. They avoided the monsters. And when a team rushed them from behind, Izuku did something simple and cruel. He released a decoy headband. The attacker grabbed it and peeled away, thinking they'd scored. They didn't realize until seconds later that it wasn't worth anything. By then, Izuku's team had already repositioned. When the buzzer sounded, they were still standing, and still had their highest value headband. They didn't place first. They didn't need to. They placed high enough to qualify. Izuku looked up at the stands again. The crowd was chanting his name now, some of them anyway. Midoriya. Midoriya. Izuku's chest tightened. This is dangerous, he thought. Because it felt good. And feeling good was how you started making stupid choices. Event 3, Tournament. 1-on-1. No teams. No hiding behind chaos. The bracket flashed on the big screen. Izuku's first match, a student from General Studies. The crowd expected him to lose. Izuku won in 30 seconds, by refusing to engage, baiting an overextension. And binding the opponent's legs with tape for a clean ring out. Second match, a hero course student with decent power. Izuku won by forcing the fight into angles, using the boundary like a weapon. And exploiting hesitation. Every victory was the same message. He wasn't stronger. He was harder to catch. Then the bracket narrowed, and the name across from his lit up on the screen like a warning. Todoroki Shoto. The stadium roared, because everyone wanted to see Todoroki. And everyone wanted to see what the quirkless kid would do when faced with a walking disaster. Izuku stood across from Todoroki in the arena, breathing slowly. Todoroki's expression was calm, eyes cold, half his hair white, half red. You're quirkless, Todoroki said, like he was reading a fact from a file. Izuku nodded. Yeah. Todoroki's gaze flicked to Izuku's gear, minimal, safe, practical. You made it this far anyway, Todoroki said. Izuku's throat tightened. So did you. The air between them felt heavy. The announcer's voice boomed. Begin. Izuku moved first, not charging, circling, testing. Todoroki's hand lifted. Ice exploded across the arena like a tidal wave. The temperature dropped instantly. Izuku's breath caught as the floor turned into a slick field. He sprinted sideways, barely staying upright. He used the very edge of the arena where the ice was thinner. Todoroki created more ice, trying to box him in. Izuku's brain fired fast. He's controlling space. I can't fight that. I can only choose where I die. So he didn't. He used the perimeter, vaulting small ice ridges, staying moving. Forcing Todoroki to keep expanding the field, bigger, wider, heavier. The crowd screamed with excitement. To them, it looked like a spectacle. To Izuku, it was math. If I stop, I'm frozen. If I get caught, I'm done. A wall of ice surged up in front of him. Izuku fired his grappling line toward a higher ice ridge, using it like a handhold, not swinging, just pulling himself up and over. He landed, slipped, recovered. His muscles screamed. Todoroki's eyes narrowed slightly, like he hadn't expected Izuku to keep moving. He raised his arm again. A blast of ice shot toward Izuku's legs like a trap. Izuku jumped, too late. Ice grabbed his ankle. His foot stuck. His balance went. He hit the ground hard, shoulder slamming into cold ice. Pain flashed. His breath fogged in front of his face. Todoroki walked forward slowly. Controlled. He could end it with one more move. Izuku's hands clenched. He could fight. He could thrash. He could try something desperate and stupid. But Aizawa's rule rang in his skull. Heroes live. Martyrs die. Izuku looked up at Todoroki, breath ragged. You're strong, Izuku said quietly. Todoroki didn't react. And Izuku's throat tightened, but he forced the words out. And you're holding back, he said. Not because you can't, but because you're angry at someone who isn't here. For the first time, Todoroki's expression shifted, just slightly. Izuku continued, voice shaking but steady. I don't know your life, he said. But if you want to be a hero, you can't spend the rest of it fighting your own half. Todoroki stared at him. The stadium held its breath. Then Todoroki's gaze hardened, not with rage, but with something colder. You don't get to talk about my choices, Todoroki said. Izuku nodded slowly. You're right, he said. I don't. He exhaled. But I get to talk about mine. He raised his hand slightly, palm open, surrender. I yield, Izuku said. The crowd exploded in confusion. Present Mike shouted, Midoriya forfeits. Izuku didn't look away. Todoroki stared at him like he didn't understand. Izuku's voice was quiet, meant only for Todoroki. I made it this far by not being stupid, Izuku said. I'm not starting now. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. The match ended. Izuku lay there for a second, ice melting slowly around his ankle as Ua's staff rushed in to check him. Uraraka looked horrified in the stands. Iida looked furious on his behalf. Bakugo looked livid for reasons nobody could explain. And in the VIP section, Aizawa watched Izuku with the same unreadable stare. But Izuku imagined he heard it anyway. Good. Because yielding wasn't cowardice. It was professionalism. It was choosing to live. And living meant there would be more chances to save people later. After the festival, the world didn't stop staring. Reporters shouted questions outside Ua. Is it true a quirkless student placed in the rankings? What does that mean for Hero Society? Is Ua lowering standards? Is this a publicity stunt? Izuku kept his head down. But he could feel the attention like heat on his skin. Pro heroes watched him now with interest. Not all of them, but enough. And attention was a double-edged weapon. That night, Aizawa cornered him in the hallway, quiet, sudden, like always. You yielded, Aizawa said. Izuku's stomach tightened. Yes. Aizawa stared. Why? Izuku didn't hesitate. Because I couldn't win without getting hurt. And if I got hurt, I'd lose the ability to help later. Aizawa's eyes narrowed slightly. Correct, he said. Izuku's chest loosened. Aizawa's voice dropped. Internships are coming, he said. Pros will want you now. Izuku blinked. They will. Aizawa's gaze sharpened. And villains will notice you too, he said. Don't forget that part. Izuku swallowed hard. Aizawa turned away, scarf trailing behind him like a shadow. Slowmoro we work. Izuku stood there for a moment, heart pounding. Because the sports festival wasn't just a tournament. It was a broadcast. And somewhere out in the world, people he'd never met were making decisions about him now. Some with admiration, some with doubt, some with hunger. The internship offers didn't arrive like love letters. They arrived like contracts. Ua handed them out in sealed envelopes, agency logos stamped on the front, names written in clean marker, like the school was casually distributing possible futures. Izuku sat at his desk and stared at his pile. It wasn't huge, but it existed, and that alone felt surreal. Uraraka squealed when she opened hers. Gunhead. I got Gunhead. Ida's spine nearly turned into a flagpole. I have been accepted by the Ingenium Agency. Bakugo opened his envelope, scoffed at something, and immediately looked like he wanted to explode a wall just to feel better. Todoroki didn't react much at all. He just stared at his offer like it was a chess move he hadn't decided to make yet. Izuku looked down at his own. There were a few names he recognized, mid-tier agencies, some local heroes. One flashy rescue group that probably wanted him for the quirkless festival kid headline. And then there was one offer that didn't have a flashy stamp. It was plain, a simple tree logo. Kamui Woods Agency. Izuku's breath caught. Kamui Woods wasn't underground. He was visible. He was famous for restraint work, crowd control, clean captures. The kind of hero who made villains look manageable on live TV. Izuku's first instinct was, why would he want me? His second instinct was, because I'm a useful tool in his toolkit. And that thought made him uncomfortable in a way that wasn't bad, just honest. A shadow fell across his desk. Izuku looked up. Aizawa stood there, scarf loose, eyes half-lidded. He didn't ask. He didn't comment on the piles. He just reached down, picked up one envelope between two fingers like it might be dirty, and read it. Kamui Woods, Aizawa said. Izuku swallowed. Yeah. Aizawa's gaze slid to Izuku's face. You're thinking it's too public. Izuku blinked. I mean. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. It is. Izuku's stomach tightened. Then Aizawa added, blunt as ever. That's why you should take it. Izuku froze. What? Aizawa leaned closer slightly, voice low enough that only Izuku could hear. You're not going to stay invisible, he said. Not after the festival. Not after USJ. So you learn to function while watched. Izuku's throat went dry. Aizawa tapped the envelope once with a finger. Kamui Woods specializes in restraint and crowd control, he continued. He'll force you to work clean. Legally. With witnesses. Izuku's heart pounded. And, Aizawa said, eyes sharpening, he won't let you play hero. Izuku swallowed. I don't. Aizawa's stare made him shut up instantly. Aizawa straightened. Go, he said. Watch. Learn. Don't improvise unless you have to. Quote. Izuku nodded hard. Yes. Aizawa turned away, already leaving, then paused. One more thing, he said without looking back. Izuku held his breath. Your job isn't to be impressive, Aizawa said. Your job is to be useful. Then he walked off like he hadn't just rewired Izuku's whole nervous system again. Kamui Woods Agency smelled like fresh coffee, disinfectant, and money. It wasn't flashy on the outside, just a clean building with a simple sign, but inside it ran like a professional machine. Staff moved with purpose. Screens displayed incident reports and city maps. A receptionist nodded at Izuku and handed him a visitor badge before he even had time to introduce himself. He was escorted to a briefing room where 3 other interns sat. 2 from other schools. 1 from UA, Tokiyami. Sitting quietly, dark shadow tucked close like a nervous pet pretending not to be nervous. Tokiyami looked up as Izuku entered. Midoriya. Izuku blinked. You're here too. Tokiyami's voice was calm. Kamui Woods values restraint. He values control. Izuku nodded slowly. That makes sense. A door slid open. Kamui Woods stepped in. Up close, his presence was different from the stadium. He still looked like a walking tree made into a hero, bark-like armor plates forming his shoulders and arms, but his eyes were sharp and focused in a way that didn't feel like celebrity hero. It felt like experienced professional. Interns, Kamui Woods said. Everyone straightened. His gaze swept across them, then landed on Izuku. He didn't stare at him like a novelty. He stared at him like a variable he needed to understand. Midoriya Izuku, Kamui Woods said. Izuku bowed. Yes, sir. Kamui Woods's wooden brow ridge shifted slightly. You're the quirkless student. Izuku's chest tightened. Yes. Kamui Woods nodded once. Good, he said. Then listen carefully. He clicked a remote and a screen lit up with a city map. Hero work is not a sport, he said. It's not a stage. It's not a personal journey. The interns went quiet. It is coordination, Kamui Woods continued. It is law. It is public safety. And it is consequences. He tapped the screen. A list appeared. Agency rules. 1. Do not escalate force. 2. 3. Do not pursue alone. 4. 5. Do not touch a civilian unless necessary. 6. 7. If you must touch, announce what you're doing. 8. 9. Call police. Always. 10. 11. Document everything. 12. Izuku's stomach flipped. Announce what you're doing. That was new. Kamui Woods' gaze sharpened. You, he said, pointing at Izuku, will not fight. Izuku froze. One of the interns blinked. Tokiyami remained perfectly still. You will observe, Kamui Woods said. You will communicate. You will assist evacuations. You will do first aid. You will manage crowd flow if we have to move people. Izuku swallowed. Yes. Kamui Woods held the stare for a beat, then added. And if you ignore that, you will be sent back to UA. Izuku's lungs tightened. Then he nodded hard. Understood. Kamui Woods looked away like the matter was settled. Good, he said. Because if you want to become a hero with no quirk, you need to learn the most brutal truth early. Izuku's pulse hammered. Kamui Woods' voice didn't soften. The public will not remember how hard you tried, he said. They will remember what went wrong. That sentence landed in Izuku's chest like a weight. Kamui Woods clapped his hands once, sharp. Gear check, he said. Then patrol. The first time Izuku walked out into the city wearing an intern armband, people looked at him differently. Not with worship. With expectation. A woman holding grocery bags glanced at the agency logo and relaxed slightly. A kid pointed and whispered excitedly. A man on a phone took a picture. Izuku's stomach twisted. Watched, he thought. The agency patrol vehicle wasn't a flashy hero car with neon lights. It was a sturdy van with emergency equipment in the back. Kamui Woods sat in the front passenger seat, quiet, while the driver, an agency staff hero, monitored a tablet with incident reports. Izuku sat in the back with Tokiyami, a radio clipped to his chest, hands resting on his knees to stop them from shaking. Kamui Woods spoke without turning around. Midoriya, he said. Yes, Izuku answered instantly. Your voice, Kamui Woods said. Keep it level. Civilians mirror stress. Izuku swallowed. Yes. Tokiyami murmured. He means your tone becomes their weather. Izuku blinked, surprised. Tokiyami's eyes stayed forward. Panic spreads. Izuku nodded slowly. Right. The radio crackled. Possible hostage situation. Convenience store. Suspect armed with a bladed quirk extension. One civilian injured, minor, still conscious. Police en route, 2 minutes out. Izuku's blood turned cold. Hostage. Real. Kamui Woods' voice stayed calm. We respond. Interns, you stay NS-tructed. The van turned. Sirens were distant, not theirs, police's. Izuku's breathing tried to speed up. He forced it down. In. Out. They arrived to find a small crowd gathering outside a convenience store, phones already out, filming like it was entertainment. A man stumbled out, clutching his arm, blood spotting his sleeve, not gory, but enough to make Izuku's stomach clench. Stay back, someone shouted. Heroes here. Kamui Woods stepped out first, tall and controlled. His mere presence made the crowd quiet, like the air respected him. Izuku followed, staying behind him in the van door like Aizawa would have demanded. Kamui Woods pointed at Izuku without looking. Crowd, he said. Izuku blinked. Me. Kamui Woods' voice was flat. You're not fighting. That means you manage the part you can. Izuku's heart pounded. He nodded. Okay. He moved to the crowd edge, raising his hands slightly, not dramatic, just visible. Everyone please step back, Izuku said, keeping his voice level like Kamui instructed. Give the police space. Don't block the sidewalk. A man scoffed. Kid, who are you? Izuku swallowed, kept his tone steady. Ua intern. Please step back. Phones stayed up. People didn't move enough. Izuku's brain snapped into, win conditions. They won't move for a request. They might move for a reason. He looked at a woman near the front, older, worried. Holding her phone with shaking hands. Ma'am, Izuku said gently, if the suspect sees you're filming, he may hurt the hostage. Her eyes widened. She lowered her phone instantly. Others heard that. Phones began to lower, one by one, like a small wave of shame. Izuku pointed, calm and clear. Back behind the line, please. This time, they moved. Not perfectly, but enough. Inside the store, a man's voice shouted, ragged, angry. You think you can just take me? He yelled. I'll cut her. I swear I will. Kamui Wood stood at the entrance, hands raised, though. Ice calm like he was speaking to a frightened animal. I'm not here to hurt you, Kamui Wood said. I'm here to end this safely. Izuku's skin prickled. The villain's quirk, something blade-like, flashed near the hostage's neck. Izuku couldn't see clearly. He didn't try to. He focused on his job. A man on the ground outside groaned, injured civilian. Izuku crouched near him, keeping a safe distance. Sir, Izuku said gently. I'm going to help you. Is it okay if I touch your arm? The man blinked, surprised by the question. Why yeah. Izuku nodded. Okay. I'm going to check the bleeding and wrap it. His hands moved, clean, practiced. Not perfect, but controlled. He used the first aid kit from his belt, compressing the wound, wrapping it tight enough to slow bleeding without cutting circulation. The man's breathing eased slightly. Thanks, he muttered. Izuku's throat tightened. Stay with me. Keep breathing. Then the store erupted into motion. A crash. A shout. Kamui Woods' arm snapped. Forward, wooden tendrils surged in like living ropes, wrapping the suspect's legs and torso in one clean movement. The hostage was pulled away by agency staff instantly, guided toward safety. The suspect struggled, yelling. But the wood tightened, not crushing, just locking. Police stormed in right after, handcuffs clinking. It was over in seconds. And the entire time, Kamui Woods never raised his voice. Izuku's hands were still on the bandage when he realized his own breathing was shaking. That was real. Tokiyami stood nearby, dark shadow hovering protectively. Efficient, Tokiyami murmured. Izuku swallowed. Yeah. The hostage, a teenage girl, stumbled out, crying, held by an officer. Her eyes darted around wildly like she couldn't believe she was alive. Kamui Woods approached her slowly. I'm going to guide you. Kamui Woods said calmly. Is that okay? She nodded frantically. Kamui Woods placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle, deliberate, then guided her toward paramedics. Izuku stared. Announce what you're doing. Consent. It wasn't just kindness. It was stability. The public watched. Phones rose again, now filming the hero moment, the clean arrest, the saved hostage. And then someone's camera turned toward Izuku. Isn't that the quirkless kid? Someone whispered. Izuku's stomach dropped. He kept his face neutral. But inside, something cold slid down his spine. Noticed. Kamui Woods turned his head slightly. His voice was low when he spoke to Izuku. Do not react. Izuku nodded. Kamui Woods continued, almost casually. They will try to turn you into a story, he said. Do not become their story. Become your own. Izuku's throat tightened. Yes, he whispered. The next call came an hour later. Not a hostage. A crash. A small car flipped on a slick intersection. People were screaming. Smoke rose, not thick, but enough to panic the crowd. Kamui Woods didn't rush in like a movie hero. He assessed. He pointed. You, he said to Tokiyami. Secure the vehicle. Tokiyami nodded. Dark shadow moved like a shield. Kamui Woods turned to Izuku. Evac route, he said. Izuku's brain clicked instantly. Okay. He ran, not toward the crash, but toward the crowd, hands raised, voice level. Everyone, please move back. He called. Make space for paramedics. Keep the lane clear. Someone shouted, is it gonna explode? Izuku's chest tightened. He remembered Aizawa's rule, panic is noise. He kept his tone steady. It might leak fuel. We're being careful. Please move back so you stay safe. People listened. Some didn't. A man tried to step forward, phone up. Izuku pointed gently but firmly. Sir, back behind the line, please. The man scoffed. Who are you? Izuku's stomach twisted again. He didn't snap. He didn't plead. He just said, intern. Doing crowd safety. Please step back. The man hesitated, then moved. Izuku exhaled. Kamui Woods' wooden tendrils lifted the car slightly, just enough to allow paramedics to pull a trapped driver out. The driver was conscious, crying, shaking. Izuku knelt nearby. Hi, he said softly. My name is Midoriya. You're safe. We're going to help you out, okay? The driver's eyes darted, terrified. Izuku kept his voice steady. Can you tell me where it hurts most? The driver's lips trembled. My ribs. Izuku nodded. Okay. Don't move too much. Breathe slowly. You're doing good. He felt absurd saying it. But it worked. The driver's breathing slowed a fraction. And Izuku realized something bitter and true. Sometimes, the only thing you can save, in a moment, is someone's panic. That night, when patrol ended, Izuku sat in the agency locker room and stared at his gloves. They weren't soaked in villain sludge like USJ. They weren't burned by explosions. They were stained with dirt and bandage tape residue and the faint smell of smoke. Normal evidence of a day that could have gone very wrong. Kamui Woods entered quietly. Midoriya, he said. Izuku stood fast. Yes. Kamui Woods watched him for a second. You did well, he said. Izuku blinked. I just followed instructions. Kamui Woods nodded once. That is what, well, is. Izuku swallowed. Kamui Woods's gaze sharpened. But now you learn the cruel part, he said. Izuku's stomach tightened. Cruel part. Kamui Woods leaned against a locker, arms crossed. Today went clean, he said. Because the suspect was sloppy. Because the crowd listened. Because the hostage didn't panic at the wrong second. Quote. Izuku listened, heart pounding. Kamui Woods's voice stayed calm and cold. One day, he said, you will do everything right, and someone will still get hurt. Izuku's throat went dry. Kamui Woods continued. And the public will decide whether that was your fault. Izuku's chest tightened hard. Kamui Woods looked at him, eyes sharp. That to react, he said. You can't control what they say. You can control what you do. Izuku nodded slowly. Then Kamui Woods added, almost as an afterthought. Also, he said, a new pattern is appearing in the city. Izuku blinked. Pattern. Kamui Woods turned on a screen. A news clip played, blurred images of alleyways, police lights, and a headline in bold letters. Hero killer. Stain, another attack. Izuku's stomach dropped. Kamui Woods's voice was quiet now. He targets heroes, he said. Not for money. Not for chaos. Izuku swallowed. Then why? Kamui Woods's eyes narrowed. Because he thinks hero society is rotten, he said. And he's trying to purify it. Tokiyami's voice from the doorway was low. A fanatic. Kamui Woods nodded. Izuku stared at the screen, a cold feeling spreading through him. A villain who didn't want fame. A villain who didn't want money. A villain who hunted heroes like a message. Kamui Woods glanced at Izuku. In Midoriya, he said, you're exactly the kind of story a fanatic would notice. Izuku's mouth went dry. Kamui Woods's tone stayed steady. So you do what you've been doing, he said. You don't chase him. You don't hunt him. You don't try to be brave. Izuku swallowed hard. Kamui Woods finished. Voice flat. You stay alive. Izuku nodded. But in his chest, something restless shifted. Because staying alive was the plan. And yet, somewhere out there, someone was choosing who deserved to live. And Izuku hated how that thought made his hands clench. Hosu City smelled like rain and hot asphalt and nerves. Even before the alarm started, you could feel it in the way pedestrians kept glancing over their shoulders, in the way shopkeepers kept their doors half closed, in the way every alley looked like it had teeth. Kamui Woods stood in the agency van's open doorway, arms crossed. Bark armor catching the light from a cloudy sky. His eyes didn't move like a tourist's. They moved like a professional reading a situation. Repeat the briefing, he said. Izuku straightened in the back seat. We're responding to increased disturbance reports in Hosu. Possible villain activity connected to recent attacks. Primary priorities. Evacuation routes, crowd control, non-escalation. And coordination with police. Kamui Woods nodded once. And, Izuku swallowed. We do not chase targets into unknown terrain. We do not separate. We do not pursue vigilante style. Tokiyami sat beside Izuku, calm as a shadow. But dark shadow's outline twitched with tension. Kamui Woods's gaze sharpened. Good. Then he added, bluntly. This city is where heroes go to die when they start believing their own hype. Izuku's throat tightened. The radio crackled. Multiple reports near Hosu Station. Crowd panic. Possible villain with blades sighted, unconfirmed. Police en route. Pro-response requested. Izuku felt his pulse jump at the word blades. He didn't think, cool. He thought cuts. And cuts meant blood. And blood meant Stain, the hero killer. Kamui Woods' voice stayed steady. We respond to the crowd first. The van moved. Izuku pressed his fingertips into his palms through his gloves, grounding himself. Don't be noise, he reminded himself. Be useful. They arrived to a messy street corner where people were clustering, filming, shouting, half panicking and half excited like fear was a form of entertainment. Kamui Woods stepped out and didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The fact that he was there made the air behave. Izuku moved automatically to the edge of the crowd. Everyone please move back, he said, tone level. Make space. Keep the road open. Someone shouted, is it Stain? Izuku's stomach dipped. Kamui Woods didn't answer that. He pointed at a staffer. Police line. The staffer unrolled a barrier tape. Izuku helped guide civilians behind it, hands open, posture non-threatening. He caught glimpses between shoulders, paramedics tending to someone who'd tripped during the panic. A broken signpost. A bike on its side. No visible attacker. B.U.T. The energy in the crowd was wrong, like they were waiting for the next scream. Tokiyami's voice came low beside Izuku. The crowd behaves as if expecting a spectacle. Izuku swallowed. They are. That's the problem. A vibration hit Izuku's pocket. His phone. A message. He shouldn't check it. Not right now. But he did anyway, quick, hidden behind his forearm. Iida, Midoriya, are you in Hosu? Izuku's spine went cold. Another message. Instantly after. Where are you? Izuku stared at the screen. Iida was supposed to be doing his internship, structured, supervised. He wasn't supposed to be texting like this. Izuku typed back fast, fingers shaking. Yes. Kamui Woods Agency. Why? Are you okay? Where are you? No response. Izuku's throat tightened. Iida is here. In Hosu. Where Stain has been sighted. Aizawa's voice tried to rise in his head, the rule like a chain. Don't chase. Don't separate. Don't pursue. But something else rose with it, something Izuku hated because it felt like instinct. If Iida is here, it's because he's doing something stupid. Izuku looked up and scanned the street, eyes moving fast. And then he saw him. A familiar silhouette cutting through an alley entrance 2 blocks away, tall, rigid. Moving too fast for normal patrol, posture like a person trying to outrun their own thoughts. Tenya Iida. He didn't look around. He didn't slow. He didn't check corners. He moved like a missile with one target. Izuku's blood went ice. Kamui, Izuku said, voice low, stepping closer to the hero. Iida, my classmate, he's here. He just went into that alley. Kamui Woods' eyes narrowed. Intern. Yes, Izuku said fast. He's not with us. He shouldn't be alone. Kamui Woods' barked jaw tightened. Do you know why he's here? Izuku swallowed. His brother was attacked. Kamui Woods' gaze sharpened. And you're thinking that he's going after Stain, Izuku finished. Kamui Woods stared for one long second. Then his voice went flat and heavy. Tokiyami, he said. With me. Midoriya, stay with crowd control. Izuku's stomach dropped. Sir. Kamui Woods' eyes narrowed. No. Izuku's hands clenched. If he's going after Stain, he'll get killed. Kamui Woods' voice didn't rise, but it hit like a wall. And if you run into an alley after him, he said, you'll die next to him. Izuku swallowed hard. Kamui Woods continued, calm and brutal, your job is here. If the crowd panics, people get crushed. You're useful here. Izuku's throat tightened. He nodded. Yes, sir. Kamui Woods turned to go. Then paused. His head angled slightly, like he was listening. Izuku didn't hear it at first. Then he did. A scream. Not from the crowd. From deeper in the city. Kamui Woods moved instantly. Tokiyami followed. Izuku stood there, frozen for half a heartbeat, not in fear, but in decision overload. Crowd control. Rules. Supervision. Don't chase. And then his phone buzzed again. A single message popped up, short and terrifying. Iida. Found him. Izuku's lungs stopped working. He stared at the words. Found him. Not. Found a lead. Not. I'm checking. Found him. Izuku's vision narrowed. He could still hear the crowd behind him. He could still see civilians filming. But the alley entrance 2 blocks away looked like a mouth. Izuku made a choice. Not a heroic one. A practical one. He grabbed the nearest agency staffer and shoved the barrier tape spool into their hands. "Keep them behind the line," Izuku said. Voice steady even as his heart tried to tear out of his chest. "Tell Kamui Woods I'm moving to assist another intern in immediate danger." The staffer blinked. "What, kid?" Izuku didn't wait. He ran. Not down the middle of the street. Along the edges. Using cars for cover. Keeping sightlines broken. Moving like eyes when the world got sharp. "I'm not chasing a villain," he told himself. "I'm responding to a rescue." That was the line he could live with. The alley swallowed him. The noise of the festival-like crowd dropped away, replaced by dripping water and distant sirens and the harsh sound of his own breathing. He slowed as he went deeper. Not because he was scared. Because speed without awareness was suicide. Then he heard voices. A harsh one, rasping, irritated. And Ida's, tight, furious. Cracking at the edges. Izuku slipped around a corner. And saw it. Ida stood with his arms raised, stance stiff, engines in his calves humming faintly. His glasses were pushed slightly off-center. His jaw was clenched so hard it looked painful. Across from him was a man in a ragged cloak, hunched posture, messy hair, and a presence like a knife left on a table. He held blades. Not flashy energy blades. Real steel, worn and ugly, built for one job. Stain. Izuku's stomach turned over. Stain tilted his head slowly, voice rough. "So you're Ingenium's little brother." Ida's voice shook. "You crippled him." Quote. Stain's laugh was short and dry. "He wasn't worth killing." That sentence hit Ida like gasoline. Ida surged forward. Izuku's throat tightened. "No," Izuku whispered. Ida's kick shot out. Stain moved. Not fast like a speed quirk. Fast like a predator who'd done this 100 times. He slid aside and swung. A flash of steel. Ida jerked back, but not enough. A thin cut opened on Ida's arm. Not deep, but enough. Izuku's blood went cold. Blood curdle. Stain's tongue flicked out. Gross, quick, touching the blood on the blade. Ida's eyes widened. His body locked. He froze mid-breath. Frozen like a statue that hadn't agreed to be one. Izuku's heart slammed into his ribs. Stain's eyes gleamed with something like satisfaction. "There," he murmured. Stillness. The moment idiots realize they aren't gods. Stain stepped toward Ida, blade lifting. Izuku didn't think. He moved. Not at Stain. At the condition. He threw a smoke canister, not in Stain's face. But at the ground between Stain and Ida. Smoke exploded outward, thick and fast. Stain's blade paused. Not because he was blinded, he wasn't the type to panic. But because the kill line had been interrupted. Izuku slid in low. Grabbed Ida under the shoulders, and dragged him backward, careful not to wrench his arm. "Midoriya." Ida's voice was strained, not with movement, because he couldn't move, but with shame. "Why?" "Shut up." Izuku snapped, then immediately softened his tone. "Breathe. Don't fight it." Stain's voice came through the smoke, amused. A quirkless child in the alley. How poetic. Izuku didn't answer. He didn't argue with villains. He calculated. Stain needs blood contact. Avoid cuts. Avoid close-range exchanges. Deny him a clean line. Stall until help arrives. He felt Ida's body stiff like stone in his arms. "Can you speak?" Izuku whispered. "Yes," Ida said, voice tight. "I can't move." "Okay," Izuku said. "Then listen." His hands shook as he pulled a tape spool from his belt. He wrapped tape around Ida's injured arm. Not just bandaging, but covering the cut as fast as he could to reduce any further bleeding. Stain's silhouette moved in the smoke, a darker shadow in gray. Izuku's pulse hammered. He fired his grappling line upward at a maintenance ladder above them. Hook caught. Line taut. Izuku yanked. A loose hanging sign swung down, slamming into the alley wall with a crash. Not dangerous. Just loud. Stain's head snapped toward the sound. 1 second of attention redirected. Izuku used it to drag Ida farther back, toward a wider intersection where the alley opened, more space. More escape routes. Stain followed, slow and steady, like he wasn't worried. "That boy wants revenge," Stain said, voice casual. "You want to save him." Heroes and children. Always the same. Izuku's teeth clenched. He didn't respond. He threw a slip disc behind him as he moved, placing it where Stain's foot would land if he lunged. Not to win. To make him think. Stain stepped forward and stopped short. Eyes narrowing as he spotted the disc. Izuku felt a savage little surge of relief. He noticed. Good. He's cautious. Stain chuckled. Clever. The smoke thinned. Visibility returned in patches. Stain's eyes locked onto Izuku fully now. You, Stain said. You're the quirkless UA student. Izuku's stomach tightened. Stain continued, voice oddly intense. You saved someone in the exam. You yielded in the festival instead of feeding your ego. You flipped a sprinkler system at USJ. Izuku's blood ran colder. He's been watching. Stain's head tilted. Tell me, child, why do you want to be a hero? Izuku's throat tightened. Not because he didn't have an answer. Because the wrong answer would get them killed. I don't, Izuku said. Stain blinked. Izuku kept his voice steady. I want to do the job. Stain stared at him. For a second, the alley felt quieter than it should have been. Then Stain laughed. Low, rough. Interesting. Izuku didn't relax. Not even a millimeter. Because Stain's interest wasn't safety. It was selection. Stain shifted his blade slightly. The world is filled with fake heroes. People who want applause. His eyes slid to Iida, still paralyzed. And then there are boys like him. Stain said, voice turning sharp. Who wear justice like a costume to hide their hatred. Iida's voice cracked. Shut up. Stain's grin sharpened. Ah, so you can still bark. Izuku's hands clenched. Stall. He lifted his hands slightly, palms open, non-threatening. Talk later, Izuku said. If you want to lecture, fine. But he's bleeding. If you want him alive enough to hear it, you need to stop stepping forward. Stain paused. Then he chuckled again. You're commanding me. Izuku's chest tightened. I'm managing the situation, Izuku corrected. Stain's eyes narrowed. He took one step forward. His foot hit the slip disc. Stain didn't fall. He was too skilled for that. But his weight shifted, and for a fraction of time his stance was imperfect. Izuku moved instantly. He threw tape, not at Stain's body, but at the blade. The tape wrapped the handle, making grip friction messy, sticky. Stain hissed in irritation and jerked the blade, tearing the tape free, but that half-second was enough. Izuku grabbed Iida and dragged him another meter back. Stain's voice turned colder. So you can fight. Izuku's lungs burned. I can delay. Stain's eyes flashed. Delay is still interference. He lunged. Izuku's body moved before his brain finished the thought. Sidestep, drop center, roll, come up. Steel sliced through the air where his neck had been. Izuku's heart slammed. Too close. Stain was fast. Not quirk fast. Skilled fast. Every movement was economical, no wasted motion, like Aizawa, but with murder in his posture. Izuku backed up, hands shaking, forcing them steady. He couldn't win a direct exchange. So he changed the map. He fired his grappling line at a fire escape above them and yanked, causing a metal ladder to drop with a heavy clatter between him and Stain. Barrier. Not permanent, but enough. Stain stepped over it like it was nothing. Izuku's stomach twisted. Okay. Not enough. He scanned. A side street opening. A vending machine. A stack of trash bins. A maintenance door with a lock. A security light panel. Light. Izuku moved sideways and grabbed the panel switch box, ripping it open with his fingers. Sparks snapped. Small, not dangerous. The floodlight above them flickered, then blazed on. Bright. Harsh. Stain's eyes narrowed at the sudden glare. Izuku used the moment to shout. Loud, sharp, controlled. Help. Villain engagement. Hosu, alley off Main Street. His voice echoed. Somewhere, someone would hear. Somewhere, a hero would turn. Stain's grin returned, mean. You're rude. You understand you can't win. Izuku didn't answer. He didn't have time. Stain surged again, and a new voice cut through the air like ice cracking. Midoriya. Izuku's head snapped. Todoroki Shoto stood at the alley entrance, eyes cold, posture calm. He wasn't alone. A blast of cold rolled across the ground as Todoroki's left hand lifted. Ice surged into the alley, not a tidal wave, controlled. Targeted, creating distance and forcing Stain to adjust footing. Izuku exhaled so hard it hurt. Todoroki. Izuku shouted. Don't get cut. Todoroki's eyes flicked to Iida, paralyzed, and his jaw tightened. Iida did this. Izuku's voice was tight. Stain. Blood, paralysis. Don't let him taste you. Stain laughed softly. More children. Todoroki stepped forward, not reckless, eyes scanning Stain with quick calculation. Stain's gaze slid to Todoroki, intrigued. Half and half. You're powerful. Are you a real hero? Todoroki didn't respond. He raised a wall of ice behind Stain, not trapping him fully, but limiting escape routes. Izuku understood instantly. Containment. Control space. He moved to Iida, keeping his body low, and tightened the bandage over Iida's cut. How long? Izuku whispered to Iida. Iida's voice shook. I don't know. Stain answered for him, amused. Depends on blood type. He'll move again soon. Or he won't. If I decide he doesn't need to. Izuku's stomach tightened. Todoroki sent another wave of ice, this one aimed at Stain's feet. Stain jumped, landing lightly on a higher ridge, moving like he'd done this against ice users before. He was smiling. Like this was fun. Izuku's hands clenched around his tape spool. T.S. wasn't a fight you won by being stronger. This was a fight you won by not giving him what he wanted. A clean kill. A clean message. Izuku looked at Todoroki and shouted, "Don't rush. We stall." Todoroki's eyes narrowed. "You're telling me to not end it." Izuku's voice shook. "We can't. Not cleanly. He's too fast. We wait for pros." Stain tilted his head. A child telling a powerful boy to restrain himself. Now that is heroism. Todoroki's gaze hardened, annoyed at being analyzed by a villain. Stain lunged at Todoroki. Todoroki threw up ice. Stain's blade scraped it, carving a line. Todoroki pivoted and blasted heat, not a full inferno, just enough to melt the ice edge and create steam. The alley filled with fog again. Izuku's stomach flipped. Smoke and steam. Visibility shredded. Stain moved inside it like he belonged there. Izuku's pulse spiked. Panic is noise. He breathed. In. Out. He listened. Footsteps. Steel scraping. A sharp inhale. Izuku tracked the sound and threw a slip disc toward it. A soft skid. Stain's movement hesitated, tiny, but real. Todoroki used that fraction to slam a thick ice ridge across the alley midline. Barrier. Stain clicked his tongue. Annoying. Izuku reached for his radio, he'd kept it clipped under his jacket. He hit transmit. Kamui Woods. Izuku shouted into it. Stain engaged. Alley off Main Street. 2 students down, 1 paralyzed. Need immediate pro response. Static. Then Kamui Woods's calm voice cut through. Hold position. Do not pursue. Pro response inbound. Izuku's chest loosened by a hair. Copy, Izuku said, breath ragged. We're stalling. Stain's voice came out of the steam, closer than Izuku liked. You're all so desperate to keep breathing, Stain murmured. But tell me, how many fake heroes have you seen? Todoroki didn't answer. He struck again, ice shaping like a cage, heat venting like pressure. Izuku stayed near Iida, tape ready, eyes scanning for Stain's angle. Stain burst through the steam suddenly, right toward Izuku. Izuku's heart jumped. He wasn't aiming at Todoroki. He was aiming at the vulnerable. The paralyzed. The lesson. Izuku moved. Not forward. Sideways, putting himself between Stain and Iida without closing enough to get cut. He threw tape low, aiming for Stain's ankle. Stain stepped over it with contempt, blade swinging. Izuku ducked. Steel kissed the air above his head. A cold sweat broke across Izuku's spine. Too close. Too close. Stain's eyes gleamed. Still alive. Izuku forced his voice steady. Still not letting you win. Stain's grin widened. Win. He lunged again. A wall of ice exploded up between them. Todoroki's timing perfect. Stain's blade slammed into it and stuck for half a heartbeat. Izuku used that heartbeat to slap tape around the blade's base, sticking it to the ice. Stain yanked. Annoyed, ripping free, but it cost him time. Todoroki's heat flared, melting the ice around Stain's boots into slick water. Stain slid. Just a little. Enough. Izuku didn't attack. He didn't punch. He didn't do anything dramatic. He backed up and kept his body between Stain and Iida. Because his job was simple. Deny the kill. Sirens grew louder. Real ones. Not crowd noise. Stain's head tilted slightly. He heard them too. His posture shifted, predator recalculating. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. It's over. Stain chuckled. Over. He looked at Izuku, eyes sharp, almost approving. You, Stain said, you might become a real hero. Quote. Izuku's stomach tightened. Stain's gaze slid to Iida. And you, he said, voice turning cold, are still crawling in your own filth. Iida's voice cracked. Stain raised his blade. Izuku's heart jumped, but Stain didn't strike. Instead, he threw something, small, metallic, past them. A knife. It hit a pipe above the alley. The pipe burst. Water sprayed hard, turning the ground slick. Vision messy, creating chaos. Stain moved. Fast. He vaulted off the wall, using the spray as cover, slipping past Todoroki's line of sight. Todoroki blasted ice toward the movement. It hit empty air. Stain was already gone. Just vanished into the city like a bad thought. Izuku's knees nearly gave out. He turned to Iida immediately. Iida, breathe. Just breathe. Iida's eyes were wide, shaking with rage and shame and helplessness. Todoroki stepped closer, jaw clenched. Idiot. Iida flinched. Todoroki's voice was flat, not cruel, honest. You almost got yourself killed. Iida's voice broke. He ruined my brother. Izuku's throat tightened. I know, Izuku whispered. But revenge isn't rescue. Iida's breathing shook. Then his fingers twitched. A tiny movement. The paralysis easing. Izuku exhaled hard, relief making him dizzy. Footsteps thundered into the alley. Kamui Woods arrived first, wooden tendrils already extended, eyes scanning, posture ready to restrain. Tokiyami followed, dark shadow looming. Kamui Woods's gaze snapped to Izuku. Status. Izuku swallowed. Stain retreated. Iida was cut, brief paralysis. We stalled. No fatalities. Kamui Woods's eyes narrowed at the word, retreated. Like he hated it. Then he looked at Iida, still trembling on the ground. His voice stayed calm. Medical, Kamui Woods said into his radio. We have an injured intern and a student in shock. Then his gaze returned to Izuku. You disobeyed, Kamui Woods said quietly. Izuku's stomach dropped. Yes. Kamui Woods stared at him for a long moment. Izuku forced himself to hold still. Not defensive. Not pleading. Just honest. I chose rescue, Izuku said, voice shaking. Iida was going to die. Kamui Woods's barked jaw tightened. You're lucky, he said. Izuku swallowed. Yes. Kamui Woods's eyes sharpened. And you were useful. Izuku blinked. Kamui Woods continued, voice flat and heavy. You didn't try to win, he said. You denied him what he wanted. Izuku's chest tightened. Kamui Woods looked away, scanning the alley again like he didn't want to get stuck on feelings. That's the only reason you're still standing, he said. Todoroki exhaled, annoyed. He got away. Kamui Woods's gaze slid to Todoroki. ND, the city is still alive. Todoroki's eyes narrowed, but he didn't argue. Iida's shoulders shook. He squeezed his eyes shut, and the sound he made wasn't anger anymore. It was grief. Izuku crouched beside him carefully. Iida, we'll talk later. Right now you need to breathe. Iida's voice was broken. I wanted to. I know, Izuku whispered. And he meant it. Because wanting to hurt the thing that hurt someone you loved was one of the most human feelings in the world. It just wasn't hero work. Sirens and shouting grew louder as other pros flooded the streets. Somewhere above, helicopters circled. And within minutes, the entire city knew. Stain had been confronted. Students had been involved. The story was already being written. Izuku stared down the alley where Stain had vanished, water still dripping from the burst pipe. He felt hollow. Not because he'd lost. Because he'd learned what Aizawa and Kamui Woods had been trying to teach him since day one. Some fights don't end with victory. They end with survival. And survival was messy. But survival meant you could save someone tomorrow. Izuku looked at his hands. They were shaking. He forced them still. Be useful. He reminded himself. Even now. Especially now. The next morning, Hosu City looked normal. That was the cruelest part. The streets were still full. Shops still opened. Trains still ran. People still argued about lunch like nobody had almost died in an alley the night before. But Izuku could feel the crack in the world under the normalness. Like a sidewalk that looked fine until you stepped on the loose tile. They were back at UA by evening. Not with a welcome, with a summons. Principal Nezu. Staff present. Student involved in Hosu incident. Izuku sat outside. Did the office door with Todoroki and Iida, uniforms stiff, hair still damp from hurried showers, silence heavy like wet cloth. Iida's hands were clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. His glass kept sliding down his nose because his face wouldn't stop trembling. His posture, the perfect hero posture he always wore, looked cracked. Todoroki stared straight ahead like an iceberg trying not to melt. Izuku kept his hands on his knees so he wouldn't fidget. He didn't feel fear. Not exactly. He felt weight. Because now came the part Kamui Woods warned him about. The public won't remember how hard you tried. They'll remember what went wrong. The door opened. Nezu's small voice floated out pleasantly. Come in. They stepped inside. The room smelled like tea and paper and quiet authority. Principal Nezu sat behind a desk, tiny. Calm, smiling like this was a friendly meeting. It wasn't. Aizawa stood against the wall, arms crossed, wrapped in bandages under his usual tired expression. Bessie. To him stood several staff. One of them was Vlad King, another was a stern-looking woman Izuku didn't recognize. The air itself felt like it was waiting for lies to die. Nezu clasped his hands. So, Hosu. Nobody spoke. Nezu's smile didn't change. Let's start with something simple, he said. Who left their assigned supervision? Ida's breath hitched. Izuku felt his spine tighten. Nezu tilted his head slightly, still smiling. It's okay. I already know. I'm asking to see who chooses honesty. Silence cracked. Iida stood up so fast his chair scraped. I did, Iida said, voice shaking. I left my assigned agency. I pursued the hero killer. I acted alone. His voice broke at the end like the words were cutting him on the way out. Nezu's eyes softened a fraction, but the smile stayed. And why did you do that? Nezu asked gently. Iida's hands shook. Because, Iida swallowed hard. Because he hurt my brother. The room went quieter. Nezu nodded slowly. Thank you for being honest. Then Nezu looked at Todoroki. And you? Todoroki Shoto. Why were you there? Todoroki's voice was flat. I heard an emergency call. I responded. Nezu's smile twitched slightly. That's closer to correct. Then Nezu turned to Izuku. And you? Midoriya Izuku, he said. Why were you there? Izuku's throat tightened. He didn't want to say it. Because it would sound like an excuse. But Aizawa's stare on the wall was sharp, waiting. Not for perfection. For truth. I was told to stay with crowd control, Izuku said quietly. I disobeyed. Nezu's ears perked. Why? Izuku swallowed. Because Iida was going to die, Izuku said. I treated it as a rescue. I moved to assist an intern in immediate danger. Nezu leaned back slightly, hands still clasped. And if your rescue had failed? Nezu asked softly. Izuku's chest tightened. Then I would have died too, Izuku said. Nezu's smile finally faded, just a little. That, Nezu said, voice still gentle, is the exact problem. Iida's shoulders flinched like he'd been slapped. Todoroki's jaw tightened. Aizawa didn't move. Nezu continued calmly. You all survived, which is good, but you were still students. Still minors. Still legally under supervision. He tapped the desk lightly with one finger. In a world where villains are watching, Nezu said, you made yourselves easy to manipulate. Iida's head dropped. Izuku felt his throat tighten. Nezu looked at Iida again. Tenya Iida, your actions were fueled by personal vengeance. That is not heroism. Iida's voice cracked. I know. Nezu's gaze was kind and terrifying at the same time. You could have died, Nezu said. Iida's shoulders shook. I know. Nezu's eyes slid to Todoroki. And Todoroki, Nezu said. You responded quickly. But you entered an active threat zone without contacting a pro first. You relied on your power to cover what should have been a coordinated response. Todoroki's eyes narrowed slightly. Yes. Then Nezu looked at Izuku again. In Midoriya, Nezu said. Izuku's stomach dipped. Nezu's voice stayed soft. You're intelligent. You understand systems. You know the rules. Izuku swallowed. And you still broke them, Nezu finished. Izuku nodded. Yes. Nezu's smile returned, but now it looked sharper. So, Nezu said, why should I not expel you? The word landed like a brick. Iida's head snapped up. It was my fault. Nezu raised a paw. I didn't ask you. Uku's heart tried to climb out of his chest. Aizawa's gaze pinned him from the wall. The room was silent except for Izuku's breathing. Izuku forced his voice to stay level. Because, Izuku said, I didn't go to fight. I went to stall. I went to deny a kill. I called for backup. I stayed alive. And I brought my classmates home. He swallowed hard. And because if you expel me for choosing rescue, Izuku said quietly. Then you're telling the world that rules matter more than lives. Silence. Not angry silence. Thinking silence. Nezu's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Aizawa's expression didn't change, but Izuku saw the tiniest shift in his posture, like a muscle unclenched. Nezu leaned back. That was a dangerous argument, Nezu said pleasantly. Izuku's stomach sank. Nezu continued, but not an incorrect one. Izuku blinked. Nezu tapped the desk again. Here is the conclusion, Nezu said. None of you will be expelled. Iida's breath hitched like a sob. Uraraka wasn't here, but Izuku imagined she'd faint if she heard. Nezu raised a paw before relief could turn into complacency. However, Nezu said, there will be consequences. He gestured to Aizawa. Aizawa will assign additional remedial training, Nezu said. Specifically, legal procedure, communication protocol, and escalation control. Aizawa's voice was flat. You'll hate it. Izuku nodded. Yes, sir. Nezu looked at Iida, and for a moment his tone softened. And Tenya, Nezu said. You will meet with counseling staff. Not because you are weak. Because grief makes even good people stupid. Iida's eyes stung. Yes, sir. Nezu looked Todoroki. You will practice teamwork under restricted power output. You will learn restraint as a skill, not a limitation. Todoroki nodded once. Understood. Nezu's smile returned fully now. Good, he said. Now go. They stood. As they walked toward the door, Nezu added lightly. Oh, he said. And Midoriya. Izuku froze. Yes. Nezu's eyes gleamed with quiet amusement. Your argument, Nezu said. We'll start a debate in faculty meetings that will ruin at least 3 people's week. Izuku blinked, confused. Nezu smiled. Congratulations. Izuku didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He bowed and left. Outside the office, the hallway felt like fresh air after drowning. Iida stopped walking abruptly and turned to Izuku. His face was tight, eyes wet, voice trembling. Midoriya, he said. Izuku lifted a hand. Not here. Iida flinched. Izuku's voice softened. Later. When you're not bleeding inside. Iida's shoulders shook. He bowed deeply. I was selfish, Iida whispered. I wanted him to suffer. Izuku swallowed. I know, Izuku said quietly. That's why it was dangerous. Todoroki stood nearby, watching them like he wasn't sure what to do with emotions. Then he spoke, blunt. He was fast, Todoroki said. Stain. Izuku nodded. Too fast. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. But he didn't kill you. Izuku's stomach tightened. No, Izuku said. He didn't. They all knew what that meant. Stain had chosen. And the fact that a villain's approval existed at all felt disgusting. Iida's hands clenched. He said, heroes are fake. Izuku exhaled slowly. Some are, Izuku said. Iida flinched. Izuku continued, voice low. He's wrong to kill them. He's wrong to decide who deserves to live. But he's not wrong that hero society has problems. Todoroki's gaze hardened, like the words hit a nerve. Iida whispered, so what do we do? Izuku stared down the hallway where other students moved, laughing, living like the world wasn't sharp. We do the job, Izuku said. He looked up. We become the proof he's wrong. Izuku said, not by being loud, by being consistent. Todoroki's eyes narrowed slightly, thinking. Iida swallowed, then nodded, small, shaky. Yes, Iida said. Consistent. The news exploded anyway. Stain's capture and ideology, his words, his videos, spread like fire. People debated in cafes. Online forums split into factions. Some called Stain a monster. Some called him a necessary evil. Some called him a warning sign that hero society had been ignoring. Izuku didn't watch much of it. Not because he didn't care. Because it wasn't useful. He could feel Hiway society's attention was shifting, like the crowd at the sports festival, hungry for a story. And he could feel how dangerous it was to become that story. Aizawa caught him outside the training hall one evening, scarf trailing. Eyes half-lidded. Midoriya, Aizawa said. Izuku straightened. Yes. Aizawa stared at him for a long moment. Then he said, flatly. You disobeyed a pro-hero. Izuku nodded. Yes. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. You did it anyway, Aizawa said. And you didn't die. Izuku swallowed. Aizawa continued, voice low. Don't treat that like success, he said. Izuku nodded harder. Yes. Aizawa's gaze sharpened. But, He added, like the word annoyed him, "You did one thing right." Izuku's heart jumped. Aizawa's voice stayed flat. "You didn't try to win," Aizawa said. "You tried to survive with someone else." Izuku's throat tightened. Aizawa leaned closer slightly. "That," Aizawa said, "is what you are. You're not a powerhouse. You're not a symbol." Izuku swallowed. "You're a stabilizer," Aizawa said. Izuku blinked. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. "The person who keeps the situation from becoming a massacre," Aizawa said. "The person who buys time. The person who makes others better." Izuku's chest tightened hard. Aizawa straightened. "If you keep doing that," Aizawa said, "you might actually become a hero." He turned away, then paused. "And Midoriya," he said. Izuku held his breath. "Yes." Aizawa didn't look back. "Stop trying to carry everything alone," he said. "You'll break." Izuku's throat tightened. "Yes," he whispered. Aizawa walked off, leaving Izuku standing in the hallway with a pounding heart and a strange ache in his chest. Not sadness. Clarity. Izuku looked down at his hands. Quirkless hands. Hands that couldn't blast or freeze or explode. Hands T could still pull someone out of rubble. Bandage a wound. Place a tool at the right time. Hold the line long enough for help to arrive. Heroism isn't strength, Izuku thought. It's reliability. He turned toward the training hall door. Tomorrow would bring another drill. Another crisis scenario. Another chance to learn how not to die. And somewhere out in the world, villains were watching. Heroes were watching. Civilians were watching. But Izuku didn't need their approval. He needed one thing: to keep doing the job. Even when nobody clapped. Even when the story moved on. Even when it was messy. Because that's what a real hero was. Not a symbol. Not a myth. A person who showed up, again and again, until people stopped bleeding. Izuku opened the training hall door. And walked back into the work. And at the far end.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to check out my Patreon too. Until then, take care. We'll see you in the next video.